OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Good morning and welcome along to Friday's edition of OTB AM. It's Aisling O'Reilly with you this morning. We have a brilliant show lined up, all to look ahead to a massive weekend of sport. One of the biggest Irish sporting events of the year. It is, of course, the All Ireland Senior Football Final. Kerry versus Galway on Sunday. Throw-in is at 3:30 PM. I'm going to be there alongside Kerry's James O'Donoghue live from Croke Park, so do tune in. And speaking of Kerry, we do have a Kerry special on the show today, and who better to speak to than our own Kerry native, Eoin Sheehan. How's it going, Eoin? You're back in the kingdom?
Yeah, very well, Aisling. Yes, indeed, back here. Made the journey down from Galway yesterday morning. A little bit of a road trip through Kerry, as much as you can do one in the space of one day. So we're bringing you stuff from Kenmare, from Killarney, from Tralee, and a few other places today, as we try and get a sense of what's actually happening around the county. I'd like a little bit like Galway, I will say, Aisling, where people are kind of holding back a little bit on all the hype and all the colour. Galway probably with more bunting and colour out, and probably more evidence that they're in an All-Ireland final. Kerry probably holding off until D2 on Saturday night, or Sunday night, I should say, before fully revealing that, they were really invested in this final.
Yeah, what did you make of all that? So for people that don't know, Kerry GAA on Twitter, they put out a post-match poster advertising their post-match party that's going to happen, as Eoin said, in D2. It's €20 win. Yeah, what did you make of it, Eoin?
I think I was actually at the one in 2019. I vaguely remember being there at some point, and I think there was one organised for the drawn game in 2019. I think we bought tickets and went, and it was not great because it was a drawn All Ireland. I mean, I do think that you couldn't really get away with it nowadays because for obvious reasons, but I think that people tended to wait until they saw the result before booking their hotel room. I think that's the thing that a lot of people do, that if Kerry won the All Ireland, they'd be like, I'll buy the hotel there and then, and I'll stay in Dublin for the night, or if they lose, I'll just belt away home that night because I can't possibly stick the sight of the Dubs celebrating around Dublin. So I think maybe that was a reason why that was such a disappointing experience in 2019. Why we bought tickets, I don't know, but I think I was there last time. So there is proof I was there that this thing does happen, win, lose, or draw, as the case may be. And maybe it'll be better this weekend, win, lose, or draw, because I presume anybody who wants to stay in Dublin on Sunday night will have to have had their bookings made quite some time ago.
Yeah, it definitely is something that they have always done. I'm sure most teams do it. But does it maybe put out the message to Galway that they have this one already wrapped up? Is it up in the dressing room?
Yes.
Does Pádraig Joyce have it in a speech beforehand?
Absolutely, 100%, Aisling. This is evidence that Galway are going to win the All Ireland on Sunday. if we come away from the game at the weekend and David Clifford has been wrapped up by this masterful defensive system, Cian O'Neill, Pádraig Joyce get no credit for that. D2 get all the credit for that. If Paul Conroy kicks 14 points on Sunday, remember, that's not Paul Conroy's fault. That is D2's fault. That is the reason why he turns into Superman. So yes, this is it. This is the moment Galway won the All Ireland.
Do you have your ticket?
I have my ticket. I am a season ticket holder, so thankfully there's no stress on that regard. It's just trying to help other people out to try and get tickets. But anecdotally, I don't think it's as bad as it was obviously in 2019, last time Kerry were in a final. Obviously, Dublin were the opponents on that occasion. There was maybe a less of a cost of living crisis then. And I think if you don't have Dublin or Mayo in an All-Ireland final, my experience has been that tickets are a little bit easier to get. Not that they're easy, but a little bit easier. So I think more people will get sorted than usually would in the case of an All-Ireland final week. And we may have a similar situation to the hurling, where there might actually be a few tickets floating around on the day. Yeah,
hopefully that's the case for a lot of people. So how are you feeling then? Are you on edge? How's the nerves?
Not really. I think it'll probably be more of a Sunday afternoon thing, maybe when the teams warm up and the parade begins. Like, it's been really enjoyable over the last few days, actually kind of like talking to a few legends from both counties and hearing the stories of glory from both of the counties. That's kind of like a stress-free experience, because all you're hearing is stories of people getting over the line and saying, we all lived happily ever after. We all got our Celtic cross or Celtic crosses, as the case definitely was with a lot of these Galway and Kerry legends that I spoke to. And then you kind of realise, actually, there's only going to be one of these teams that's going to come away happy at the weekend. There's one of these sets of supporters, both sets very, very confident before Sunday, I should say. One of those sets of supporters are going to be very disappointed and very wrong on Sunday with their level of confidence. So that kind of strikes home a little bit. I think that I think we could potentially be in for one of the tensest All-Irelands in a while. Everybody is saying the same thing, that it's not going to be a classic. But when you don't have a classic, what you tend to have is a tight game. And a tight game will be a tense game, especially in the context of both of these teams waiting for so long to try and get their hands on Sam.
Yeah, we're in for a cracker. It's a really, really tough one to call, and we're going to get into all of that in the GAA picks as well. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. And just to let you know what's coming up on the show this morning, we're going to speak with Kerry legend Johnny Culloty, Kerry superfan Dan Dwyer. Eoin visits Kenmare School, where several past pupils are now currently in the Kerry squad. We've Ronan O'Gara live on the line around 7:50. We've the GAA Quick Picks. Also, Eoin spoke with Kerry legend Mickey Ned O'Sullivan. And we've Marina Barry, who has won 10 All-Ireland medals with Kerry. Hasn't really done a lot of interviews. So that's a really special one. We're also going to go back to Galway. Porrick and Martin Lally, the father and son team behind Taffe's Pub in Galway. And then at 9:30, Johnny Giles talks about Matt Busby on last night's Off the Ball. So, Eoin, you spoke with Kerry legend Johnny Culloty.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to play a couple of pieces for you now. We're going to roll Johnny Culloty into Dan Dwyer. So just to mention Dan Dwyer, first of all, he's just a Kerry super fan that I met in the Cusack stand a few weeks ago. He loves to smoke a pipe, and it kind of stuck out, and we were chatting away to him. He is a fountain of knowledge, and I just did a little bit more research, and it turns out I should have known who this guy is anyway. He's been going to Kerry matches and All-Ireland finals since 1959. So I went to his house yesterday, and as it turned out, when I spoke to him, he actually worked with Johnny Culloty for over 30 years in St. Finian's Hospital in Killarney. So there's a nice segue between these two pieces. But we are going to kick it off here with Johnny Culloty, who is a legend of Kerry football, of Killarney Legion. Shout out to James O'Donoghue, who managed to help me get in contact with his family, and for his son, for persuading him to do this piece, because it's one I've wanted to do for a while. This is a guy who played hurling for Kerry. He was a Kerry hurling minor at the age of 14 and played football for Kerry, obviously, as well, moving from an outfield player to playing in goals. He ended up winning 5 All-Ireland medals on the team that included Mick O'Dwyer and Mick O'Connell. And our conversation here begins around the art of goalkeeping and how it was a little bit different back in his day.
When the goalkeeper in modern football obviously is such a different position to even 10, 15 years ago, were you doing everything as a goalkeeper? Were you taking the kickouts as well? Because I know sometimes the goalkeeper in the 60s would give it to the corner back to take, for example.
Yeah, well, I can tell you safely anyway, like, I played football, I just tell you now, in those years now, I played in goal, we'll say, with the Kerry, like, you know. I never kicked the ball out, I'd say twice, in that number of years.
Really?
The backs kicked down. Johnny Sullivan was playing cornerback. I mean, I could kick, I was playing out the field at club level, that was okay. I could kick frees and things like that, maybe from 30 yards out of 40 or something. But Johnny Sullivan would be playing a cornerback. Fellas like him now would be playing. He could kick the ball 70 yards. Right. So at that time, there was no such thing as short passing out of the car. So what business did I kicking out the ball when Johnny could kick it 20 or 30 yards faster than me?
And did he take the 45s as well out of interest, given he could kick the ball 60, 70 yards?
No, we'd Mick O'Connell out around the middle of the field.
He could also kick it that long.
He'd kick it over the bar now, about from 50 yards out.
I was just about to ask that his job must have been relatively easy, kicking the ball out, given you had Mick O'Connell in midfield. There was one man to aim at all the time, like.
Look, I'd be telling you a lie if I was saying there's about aiming at the fella in our time. Belted up the field, like, you know, and kicking this. And if it came to Mick O'Connell, you could be sure he'd catch it anyway. That was number one. So generally we'd win it after the kick out at that time as well, like, you know. Yeah. But as I said, there was no such thing as kicking into the corner back, that out of the corner, anything like that. Like, that was out taboo at that time.
You mentioned Mick O'Connell there, and you mentioned rowing in the regattas earlier. You didn't ever row with Mick, did you?
The only thing I rowed with Mick, I rowed from Renard one day. Jackie Lyon and myself on the boat. Jackie was training Kerry, and Mick had a boat pulled up there, and I rowed across with one of the oars with Mick. Mick was pulling in the other oars. That was the only time I rowed with Mick O'Connell into Valentia Island. There was no bridge. There was no bridge at that time.
What was that experience like?
It was a bit too strong for me pulling the oar, like, you know. It was inclined to turn around the circle, but we got there anyway.
Do you remember much about him as a teammate? Like, the stories around him are are legendary, you know, that he didn't like to celebrate too much when it came to an All-Ireland win. He was a man who really loved home. And like, I guess, to be fair, like, you love home as well. You're a Killarney man, true and true. He was a Valencia man. He is a Valencia man, true and true. And that seems to define him quite a lot as a player, didn't it? He liked to just get home and exist in Valencia Island.
Yeah, well, the game was all about it. What Mick had, like, Mick was only concerned on the display in the game, like, you know, and he didn't go in much for the trivialities, I suppose you could call them, you know, around it, like, you know, and the celebrations and that type of thing. He came to play, like, and he was always very fit, like, you know. I mean, the National League now, you're talking about fitness and the rest of it, but Mick O'Connell, like, he'd be fit Christmas Day, like, you know what I mean? I don't know what kind of training he'd do all the time in the island, but he was ahead of us altogether as regards fitness and the rest of it. So, like, you know, he didn't go in for, he hated, like what I'm saying to you here now, all this interview, he didn't go in much for the interviews and things like that, like, you know. But the only thing you could depend on anyway, when it came to playing anyway, he was on top of his game every day he played. All I could say is we won a good few National Leagues anyway. And I'd say he won a lot of them and he was won early for us because he was always very fit.
I asked this of a Galway fella yesterday, and I know it's not fair to compare different generations, but for people who might not have seen Mick O'Connell play, is there a modern example or somebody in maybe even from the 80s and 90s that you could compare to the type of player that Mick O'Connell was for Kerry?
I couldn't see anything anyway that compared to my tell you the truth. Like, you know, he was... The man could... Look, I often say... I wouldn't say... He could do anything. Like, he was a good kicker of the ball. He was a great fielder. He could kick left and right. He could take frees. He could take penalties. He could... Any aspect of the game, like, you know. And he was a very clean player. He didn't... He hated dirty play, like, you know, even though he was physically very strong himself. I could safely say you'd never see him anyway trying to hit any kind of a dirty belt or anything like that. He was very fair player, very clean, as I say, like, you know, but he had all the skills. You know, do you know how you're talking, you know, you often talk about fellas now, great players, all the rest, but look, if a fella can kick left and right, if a fella can kick frees off the ground, if he can kick him off his hands, if he can field, so he's not a great player. Yeah. That was I mean, Colin could do them all. Do you know what I mean?
Is he the best ever, in your opinion?
Oh, definite. I didn't see any fellow as good as him anyway, I'll tell you the truth. Yeah. No, Jack O'Shea, they said was a great player, and he was a great player. But, like, different kind of styles altogether to me. Like, you know, I'd be biased, I'd say, like, towards him anyway. Like, you know, he played all my time, like, you know. He won a lot of medals for the likes of myself, like, you know. National Leagues and All Irelands, we wouldn't have won a lot of money for him anyway.
Do you stay in touch with him a lot?
Oh, yeah. I'm talking fairly regular enough, you know. Good. I was, yeah, he was in great shape now. You know, things didn't go great lately. He's lost his wife there some time ago, like, you know, which was a very bad blow to him, like, you know, because I suppose he spends most of his time in Valencia now, like. It's different here in Killarney. I'd be meeting a lot of fellas now, maybe more so than he would, like, you know. But he's in great shape all the same, like, you know. And he's a great man to have a bit of a conversation with. He follows soccer, rugby. He follows all the games all the time anyway. He could tell you about it. Oh, he does. He keeps well in touch.
I was actually going to ask you, like, what do you actually talk about? Because we had him on the show a few years ago, and he wasn't really having much of, you know, the talk that, you know, about the rowing contributing to his fitness. He takes no nonsense, Mick O'Connell. I think it's fair to say, and it sometimes feels as if he doesn't. He's not very up for talking about modern GAA and stuff or modern sport, but he is keeping an eye on everything.
Oh, he keeps a very good eye on it. As a matter of fact, he asked me a couple of questions the other day there about the mark. He was asking me, you know, about this mark. He was kind of, you know, he wasn't very... one of the questions he was asking me, I was wondering about it myself after, because I'm not that familiar with it, like, you know. Just he'd clean up altogether because he'd a free shot at goal every day, he'd catch it, like. But he was wondering, could you catch it in the middle of the field, or could a fella catch it in the backs and say, claim a mark? And of course, I was saying to him, like, to be a great job if the goalkeeper could catch it in my time, because if you caught the ball, you could say mark and you could have a free kick out, where most of the time they were trying to belt me into the back of the net like the big acid. So you could be answering that question for them, like, you know.
Yeah. Just a couple of other things, just because we mentioned Weeshi earlier on. Yeah. You would have been good friends with Weeshi, would you?
Actually, Weeshi's only living about 3 or 4 doors down from me here, like, you know. Weeshi and myself trained together. Like, we're working the same job, we're on the same pinions.
We're working in the same pinions, right?
Yeah, the same job, yeah. And as I say, he's just living down from me. As a matter of fact, then he was coming on, because there was no sub-goalie. Sure, you know that well then, but there was no sub-goalie, like when, in the early days, like, you know, when I came on the team, like, there was no sub-goalie. We had 20 players. I could tell you that from the youth team, there'd be 20 players, like, there was 5 subs, but there was no sub-goalkeeper. I remember on 2 occasions I got injured the early time myself, and you'd look up and you'd be getting up and you know how you were going to play on or something, and you'd see some fellow that was a sub, maybe it was a forward, coming to go and steady you. So even there was fierce controversy about it, and I wish he would be sub-goalkeeper now in 69, 70, around that. He was, you know, he was playing goal for East Kerry here with us, like with East Kerry, all East Kerry here now, and I was playing out the field. So Weeshi was a better goalkeeper probably than me, but I got in goal and I was in before him. Weeshi, we were great friends, we were fellow workers. We'd go to the park now and we'd be trained together above in the field. I'd be taking penalties on him, he'd take penalties on me, and that kind of a thing, like, you know. He was probably a better goalkeeper than myself, like, you know. There was parts of him, definitely, like, you know, he was very quick, like, you know, and he was he wasn't a great kicker of the ball now, like, you know. But anyway, I wasn't opposing him after that, you know, but when he should have been, at least he should have been sub-goalie. There was no sub-goalie, as I said, at that time. So, and later then, like, you know, he won Junior All Ireland, I know, he got a Senior All Ireland, that I'm not sure really, yeah.
And after you finished playing football, you obviously would have stayed great friends, and I presume you would have been a massive fan of his broadcasting on the radio.
Or I play with the Legion here now, Dr. Crooks. I'll tell you, Dr. Crooks probably. I tell you, we have a good club ourselves, like, and Weeshi was chairman of the club, and he was secretary of the club, and whatever job was to be done, he played with the club, like his brother, Jeannie, both of them are gone now, like, you know. They played for the Bulls for 20 years with the club as well, like, you know. And to be the same with myself and my brother and the rest of them, like, you know. I'd say, like, he was probably one of my best friends, do you know what I mean? His wife, Joan, is living just down below here. And sure, we're meeting every day of the week all the time as well, like, you know, my own wife here, like. She'd go to town for a cup of tea with him and things, you know. So you'd miss him a lot now, like, you know, because, like, there's no doubt about it. He was a great profile, like, when you know, for Kerry, like, the All Ireland, now you'd see him passing the door, going up, watching the training, and he'd be talking about what was going to happen. Sure, I know how many awards he won, like, you know, for Radio Kerry, like, on the football side of it. What did they call McNamee Awards, as they call them, or something?
That's right, yeah.
I'd say they won a good few when Weeshi was, you know, he was great. He had a fierce zest for it. I couldn't hold up to him at all, talking about football. I'm sure he knew everyone in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was very popular.
Oh, very popular, yeah. But I tell you, basketball, because he played football, he's a good footballer now. He played, as I say, a very high standard, and he should have been sub-goalie, but should have hadn't a sub-goalie that time. And then he played basketball, and he played with Kerry in basketball. He was a great all-rounder. The only thing, he never mastered the hurling. He wouldn't go at the hurling, but he played every other game, like, you know.
Yes, Kerry legend Johnny Culloty. You can watch the full interview back on all of Off the Ball social channels. And great stuff there from Johnny. I love the part where he speaks about back in the day, goalkeepers, they didn't kick out the ball. They used to give it to the full-back to do the job.
And also pretty open about the fact that they didn't aim at anybody, just get it as far away
as far as
possible
you can
from the goal. So yeah, no, that's Johnny Culloty. As you mentioned there, the full piece is going to go up. It's over 40 minutes, I think, we chatted for yesterday, and obviously you heard a bit about Mick O'Connell there and Rishi Fogarty. There's also a good chat around his time in management and training the Kerry team, and also maybe the training or lack of training that Kerry would have had in the 1950s, 1960s, when I guess sports science and innovation was a far distant idea.
And we're going to come back with Kerry superfan Dan Dwyer in just a few moments' time. We're going to turn our attention now to rugby. Last weekend, Ireland made history after sealing a series win in Wellington over the All Blacks. An epic win for Ireland. Delighted to say that I'm joined by Ronan O'Gara. How's it going, Ronan?
Hey, Aisling, how are you?
Good now. What was your reaction to the win, Ronan?
Yeah, it was fantastic. Obviously, it was very well constructed, I thought. I was chatting actually to Adrian, bumped into him on holidays. Adrian was enjoying the delights of Ile de Ré. So we watched the All Ireland together and discussed a bit of the game. At 21-3, it looked like it was going to get extremely nasty for the All Blacks, but in fairness, they I suppose came back with a better plan after half time, and that's what they do. They kind of score out of nothing, and their 2 tries were probably a little bit of individual brilliance. But Ireland refocused, and then I think you have to really mention when Andrew Porter got the yellow card, how I suppose Ty Burns took over. Yes, it was a team performance, but he really came up with big plays. Big players come up with big moments, and that's a perfect example of it. He changed the momentum of the game again back in Ireland's favour, and that's difficult to do away from home, especially against a team that's fighting for their lives. But then Ireland controlled the last 10 minutes, and they controlled the ball, and it's probably from their point of view, I think they would have liked to have got a final score to really drive the nail in the coffin. But to win the series and win by 10 points and do it so comfortably will give that group huge confidence.
Yeah, it was incredible. And watching on at something like that, to see Ireland win a test series in that way, what does it mean to you? Was it emotional watching it, or what sort of emotions did you have?
No, I didn't. I wasn't emotional, I suppose, because it didn't feel like a tight game. I thought Ireland were very much in control, and it was a good example of how much their attack has improved, and probably how their team is completely aligned between their forwards and backs, and everyone understanding their role. The tries they scored with the ball were just so interesting to watch, because they picked apart a good team. You can't say that at the minute the New Zealand team is a great team, but I think was it the Robbie Henshaw's try just before half time is just the joy you get from being in that Irish, I suppose, camp when that comes off is hugely exciting. But that could be a good big starting point for Ireland in their, when they play like that. They're a very, very difficult team to stop, and it probably reinforces also that yes, they won the series, which is huge over the summer, but I suppose the record of this group of players and staff is very, very good, and they've been consistently good. And you recall the game in Stade de France, they had France under the pump and pushing them really hard to win the game at the end of the game, and that's the only game they've lost, if I'm correct.
Yeah, and a lot of people were talking about where this moment ranks in Irish sport. I suppose for Irish rugby achievements, where would you say this moment would rank?
Yeah, it's I suppose the fact that what blows all the other arguments out of the water is that there's 2 other teams that are 5 in total that have won a series in New Zealand soil over hundreds of years. Is that right?
Yeah, so there was South Africa in 1937, the Lions in 1971, you had Australia in 86, and then France in 94.
Yeah, so since, I suppose professional rugby, there hasn't been a team to do it. Mm-hmm. So, that group of players from Ireland that went over this summer, they'll always have that memory. They're the first. They've done it. And it's great too, because it puts everything into perspective a little bit. Everyone is chasing a World Cup, but there's building blocks to be performing in a World Cup, and that's the biggest building block. That's the biggest thing when you hit the rocks, and the team will have rocky periods because it's another 15 months to the World Cup, but they'll look back and go, okay, well, what stood to us when we were under the pump after losing the first test in New Zealand, when everyone And it sums up sport as well. Everyone was kind of ridiculing them 3 weeks ago, and the fact that, it's going to be a long, desperate, hard tour, and this team is old and it's stale. And then 2 weeks later, oh wow, look at the way these guys play. So it's a nice little bit of reminder for the hurlers on the ditch as well that sport changes very quickly, but judge a team over a consistent period of time. And I think that's why Ireland under Andy Farrell and under this group of players have been very, very good.
Ronan, did you and Adrian share a cheese board last weekend?
Adrian would love that.
No, he was a bit off the pace now. I didn't think he doesn't like the old glass of beer in the afternoon, so that's something he needs to improve on. No, he was doing the family man. He was kind of watching kids, watching the game, but what a game of hurling too, It was hard to keep our eye on the kids for that period of time. But we didn't share a cheese board. No, I'm more basics, a little bit of. There wasn't even. I don't think I offered them. Maybe a glass of rosé, but I don't even think I offered them that.
Very good. We must get Adrian's perspective on that as well over the next few weeks. Ronan, can I just ask there about the building blocks point that you made there? Do you feel now, I know, granted, we don't have the benefit of hindsight here, do you feel now that the win last week is a more significant building block for a team in a World Cup cycle than, say, a Grand Slam would have been in 2018 into 19?
I think so. I would definitely think so, because it's a different challenge, and the fact that we're very similar with Grand Slams and the program and the preparation involved in peaking for a Grand Slam. What no other team has done is they've peaked at the end of a season when all the potential excuses are available to go to New Zealand, and winning one test is juicy enough, but to win the series is as powerful a statement as you can possibly make. So for that group, especially losing the first one and losing it by 23 points, there were only, I suppose, little crumbles of comfort to be taken out. But I think watching it, you could see if Ireland were a little bit more accurate and a little bit more aggressive in certain areas of the game, that could come together. And then, as you know, sometimes when you put the bigger rugby nation under pressure at home, that can cause mental problems for that team, and that's what Ireland did in Test 2. And then in Test 3, what they did brilliantly is obviously they had such a big lead, because when it becomes a one-score game, the momentum that the ABs can get playing at home was huge. But the fact that they probably had a power play, a big moment, a purple patch, a big moment, that gave them the 2 tries, but Ireland were still ahead again, and then was 5 points, so the 3 points became another 2 scores. You're always in a great position mentally to have that 2-score cushion, and I think Ireland did that well. But the fact that it's completely out of their comfort zone with an 11-hour, 12-hour time difference back home, your kind of world turned upside down, playing 5 games, some boys having to tog out on the Tuesday or the Wednesday night and do the bench, and it just shows, I suppose, where there's a will, there's a way, and everyone is into this kind of, I suppose, textbook preparation for a test week. But you look with 2 Maori games thrown in week 1 and week 3. When you have a plan, when you believe in the plan can work, and Ireland showed that brilliantly, especially after, I suppose, a hugely difficult start for them on tour.
And Andy Farrell definitely had a plan to go out and win the series. I suppose there was a lot of talk at the start of it. Were we going to see other players getting a chance, to move things around in the squad, to build, to look ahead to the World Cup? And I suppose he didn't do that exactly. He probably had it in his mind. He wanted to go out and win this series. Were you impressed with the job he's done and he is currently doing so far?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me one bit. I think going back 20 years, the guy was an absolute phenomenal player and leader for Wigan. I would have been a big fan of rugby league growing up, and I would have watched his team, and the team before he came into that team, and there's some very, very special players on both coasts that have come out of that environment. And I think his roots and his DNA are very, very strong, and that he brings that with him in his coaching. He's very humble, he's very down to earth, and he's very capable of putting his hand up if he feels he hasn't gotten it right, and he's got it right far more often than anyone else. But I think he's very approachable, and that's what the players, I think, admire him. And he doesn't mind probably thinking outside the box and doing things differently and having a go and playing with a smile on their face and having a look and backing his players. And I think the good thing is he is developing his team, most definitely. But to develop his team, I think he's created an environment where players aren't just going to get thrown a jersey. You have to go out there and prove yourself in training, and the best players want to play with the best players. So this is an ultra ruthless environment as well, top level sport. But what he's doing now, he's getting results where very few people have got them. And I think building for the World Cup can start again, because we're still a summer before a World Cup. There's another 15 months. The energy and the momentum could be completely different in another 12-month cycle. So there are obviously a few positions where the depth is a little bit weaker, but that's what happens when you have world-class position or players in that position, and that'll always be the case in the top teams around the world. So what needs to be is that you need your 23 to be incredibly good. For your 23 to be incredibly good, your numbers, 23 to 40 or 23 to 32 have to be so competitive.
Yeah, it does seem that he's getting the best out of these players. And Johnny Sexton, someone that we didn't think we would see in all three of the games. Is he in the form of his life at the minute, Ronan?
Yeah, I think so. I think Johnny feeds off people writing him off, and I think he's shown that, but he needs to seek his own motivation going forward as well, because he's playing the game brilliantly at the minute. He's reading it, I think, a lot quicker than even 4 or 5 years ago. And it's not easy to, do that. And he backed up the first test, the second test, and third test at 37 years of age. Doing that is a huge feat, and mentally to be able to do that speaks volumes for where his, I suppose, mentality is at the minute. But you can see that he's very happy with the environment, very happy with the coaching group. Everything seems to be aligned, and I think that's when you see the number 10 in their best vein is when the camp is buzzing. Your 10 looks better than he actually is, and then when it's the opposite, he looks worse than he actually is. But there's no doubt about Johnny's individual game is very, very strong at the minute. But I think what also would be important for me to say is that the coaching group has the environment and the team humming. Be it Andy Farr, I think, obviously I'm biased, but Paul O'Connell's work is stamped all over this team. This guy is an incredibly interesting person, never mind coach, player, always, I suppose, seeking a little entry into a subject matter that may not be evident to other people, and would always explore to the nth degree. And if he can find some joy in that matter, he'll develop it, he'll analyse it, and then he'll potentially use it. So a fascinating deep thinker on the game, and you could see, I suppose, his habits and his methods all over the forward play the last day. You look at it like you need a set piece, you need a driving maul, and you need a good kind of ruck game. And Ireland were exemplary in both departments.
Yeah, I think it's crucial to have people like Paul around the setup. And when we speak about the 10 position, where's the pecking order now for you? We've seen Kieran Frawley come in, obviously Joey Carberry as well. For you, where do you see that pecking order?
I think it's the pecking order remains the same. You have Johnny Sexton, you have Joey Carberry, and then I think you have a decision of probably where is Kieran Frawley going to play, because if he wants to challenge to play international rugby at 10, he has to be playing club. It's too difficult at the top level to be a hybrid in the fact that if he's playing all of his club rugby at 12 for Leinster and hoping to start test games for Ireland at 10, and I would say that would be a bit of a long shot. So he'll also be, I suppose, from what I kind of see from the outset, I think he'll always put his team first, but sometimes he needs to have a word with his coaches and say, well, if he wants to play 10, then he wants to be considered to play 10, but Leinster are extremely competitive in that position, so it's a difficult conundrum for him or for others to sort.
Ronan, can I ask you about the All Blacks head coach situation then? There's obviously been a whole pile written about it over the last week, and in fairness, the All Blacks have kind of thrown a bit of petrol on it as well, saying that they're going to announce a review, and they are going to do a review. The sense seems to be that Ian Foster has a couple of games against South Africa at the start of the Rugby Championship to potentially save his job. I know that that's not necessarily the All Blacks way, but is your read on it that he is in a bit of trouble if those South Africa games don't go his way?
Yeah, potentially with the results, but I suppose there's one thing that in this position, he's under pressure from what has happened in this series. I understand what he's going through. I'm a head coach, and I'm not going to speculate or give my opinion on whether he should be kept in the job or not. I just think that it's a difficult question, and he's in a difficult period, but as he said in his press conference, he is resilient, he is a deep strategist, and that's the ruthless side of the game, and the fact that when results don't go your way, be it me, be it him, sometimes people make decisions to take you out of that position, but I don't have a strong opinion on that.
I guess just to kind of stick with that, the idea that it all falls on the head coach probably is not necessarily something that you could overly say either. You could make a case one way or the other. There's obviously been talk around who might potentially come in. Like, as a head coach in that situation, what is that pressure like? I know, just not even from your own perspective as a head coach, but even just being in New Zealand, you'll have seen the relationship between that team and the public. Is it a case that every single result that doesn't go their way is almost like a doomsday scenario? Or is that just putting too fine a point on us?
Yeah, no, it's very different in there. They absolutely, the mood of the nation is determined by how the All Blacks play, and that still applies. Obviously, there's probably a few other distractions in New Zealand, but I would not underestimate the role that the All Blacks have on the mood of the nation, and there's a massive focus on that position, but also that's what happens when you go into sport and into rugby, into management. You are the head coach, the assistants are completely different, and the pressure on the head coach is completely different, and that's an unwritten rule, and that will never change, and we're aware of what happens if results don't go your way, but you have to accept that, and accept that it's not a personal attack on you. This is the business, and this is what happens if you're underperforming, and there's a moral contract written up before you sign any physical contract that if the boss isn't happy or if the supporters aren't happy, usually it coincides with someone getting fired, and that's the cut and thrust of what managers do, what we do.
And two teams that are going to hopefully perform this weekend to the best of their ability is Kerry and Galway. Will you be watching on at the All Ireland final, Ronan?
Oh, will I what? I'll be glued to it.
Give us a prediction.
Oh, jeez, I was hoping you want. I know Eoin is listening, but Oh,
It's not easy.
no, it isn't easy, but it's not easier. I'll tell you next week.
What you'll tell me the prediction next week?
No, I'll tell you next week why I'm sitting on the fence.
Okay.
I have an interest.
Okay.
I'd be a big fan of Pádraig Giles. So I chat to Pádraig. So
Yeah, he's phenomenal.
I'm west of Ireland this weekend.
Was Sean Shea wasted to football? He could have been a great number 10 for Munster, you'd suspect.
Oh, imagine seeing that in Thomond Park. Because he'd have 28,000 people there. How many does he in Fitzgerald Stadium? You get what, 12, 15,000 on, do you?
I know, if Cork are good running, you could get 40.
I'm only joking. What a kick. What a kick.
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah, I seen you tweeting after it. It was incredible. 55 metres out, a bit of a tricky wind. Yeah, just amazing stuff.
But it's the same too. There was a little bit of dismay about what game went to penalties.
Armagh Galway.
Armagh Galway, that was it. But like, it's not a lottery. People have to understand that. It's a little bit like Sean having the mental capacity at 80 minutes to be able to kick his same kick, be it the first minute or second minute or the 82nd minute. This is what you prep for. These are the golden moments, and the penalty shootout isn't a lottery. It's a fixed skill. Yes, you have a goalkeeper, but usually if you commit to the kick and you put it where you want to, the green flag is raised, well, depending on Hawkeye. But so yeah, I think it's been a really exciting football championship. I've been glued to it every weekend, and well, maybe I might be for the summer. We might have a new football correspondent.
Oh yeah. Is that you, Ronan?
Yes, exactly.
Sorry, I shouldn't sound surprised.
I have a Fela medal, Aisling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus.
Bishopstone.
Very good, very good. Where did you play, Ronan?
Oh, corner forward.
Same as me.
You're corner forward.
Yeah, number 13.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I modelled myself a little bit on Mike Frank Russell.
Do you know who I love? Pádraig Joyce. Loved his dummies.
Yeah.
He used to replicate that. Well, I used to try anyway.
But he was a left footer, yeah?
Yeah, I'm left foot.
Oh.
There you go now.
Why Mike Frank?
Mike Frank, yeah, loved him.
What about him?
Just made Gaelic football look so easy.
Brilliant, Ronan. Well, I'd rather not wrap this conversation, but I have to. Thanks so much. Great chatting to you.
Have a good weekend. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Emil. Ronan there, fascinating as ever. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Back after the ads with an All-Ireland football final special, Quick Picks. We're heading back to Kerry now, where Eoin caught up with Dermot Butler, who is principal of the secondary school in Kenmare, which produced 6 members of Kerry's squad playing in the All-Ireland final this weekend. And Eoin asked the key question of the principal. See you back after this.
Who was the most academically talented of the crop of footballers?
Oh God, what a really good question. Well, I would say this much, and genuinely say this: those who are involved in team sports manage to get a lifestyle balance as well somewhere, and they are focused, and they don't forget about their academic side of things as well. Stephen does the answer to the question. I would say Stephen O'Brien. He was a really good student in school, and the rest of them were good as well. Tig and Shawnee. I better mention them all. No, I'll be in big trouble, won't I? Like, you know. But they all were able to balance, you know, their sport, and I think that comes from playing with team sports as well. Like, you know, that if they're involved in team, they have goals and stuff like that set. So, yeah, no, It's a really trick question, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a horrible one, but I'm glad you actually answered it. What's interesting, and this has been something that it was Michael Meehan who commented on it on one of our shows last week, the lack of buzz in schools, because obviously you're closed at the moment. What's your opinion on all that? Obviously you would have experienced a good few All-Irelands in the 2000s and sure in the 2010s as principal of this school.
Yeah, it is a pity. Because I mean, can you just imagine if we were all back in school, and you were interviewing me today, the whole school would probably be out in green and gold here or something like that. So it is disappointing, but it is what it is. And look, July, it's brilliant. There's a great atmosphere in Kenmare, and it's a pity that the school isn't open to build up that atmosphere as well in school, but please God.
Does it make a difference? In terms of people getting inspired, or I know that sometimes gets overplayed, but even in a very small way, does it make a difference having schools open during All Ireland?
In 2019, and we had it twice because it went to a replay and whatever else, I mean, the excitement about the All Ireland final in schools is just there. You can feel it. There's tension. You go into the match. We've Colours Day here, and everyone dresses in their Kerry jerseys, except for the odd few rebels that frequent us here, you do miss that, all right, but it is what it is at the moment, and if we're lucky enough to win, and please God we will be, you can come down again for the homecoming, because that will be really special, if we manage to win.
What I find really interesting when I walk around Kenmare is that nobody's been petty enough to just put down the Kenmare lads. It's the Kenmare lads and the Templenoe lads on the same posters. Is that just a postponement of local divides here, or what is the relationship like between Templenoe and Kenmare generally on the football pitch?
Well, I'm from Tralee, so there was always good local rivalries there between Austin Stacks and Kearns O'Rahilly's and John Mitchell's maybe, and now Nagale. So yeah, it's there in local rivalries. Templenoe versus Kenmare is probably the big one. Two tribes go to war, as they say, but when they come into this school and they play under Public School Inverskena umbrella, that's been great, and there's no problem with the players, and it's built up, and it is what it is. It's good. It probably drives them on, but it is there, and it's obvious that it's there at times, but most people just get on with it, and certainly from the players' point of view, they're delighted to play for their clubs. If Kenmare are playing Templenoe, that's a big rivalry match, being an outsider is probably a bit easier to watch it, but certainly not can get involved in some of what goes on there, but look, it's fantastic though as well, and all these guys are great buddies outside of it, so there's no worry. They're all playing for Kerry this weekend, and they've all played, as I said, for Public School Inverskena over the years as well,
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Marginal gains? XG? Top speed? Recovery? What's it all about? Want to improve but don't know where to start? With more data than ever now available, OTB Sports have teamed up with Whoop to cut through the noise and help you raise your game, no matter the sport. OTB Sports are delivering the metrics that matter. Meaningful metrics in partnership with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. See whoop.com for more. Follow OTB Sports social channels for the best insights and stats this season.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Some of these critics, these pundits, I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
They like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just dismiss you like you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
Yes, my favourite part of the week, it is the GAA Quick Picks. Can you believe it? We are at the All-Ireland Senior Football Final. It's Kerry versus Donegal, just the one match in town. And we are going to see where everyone has gone this week. It's such a tough one to call. Tommy Rooney, good morning.
Morning, Aisling. How are you?
Good now, not too bad. Let's have a look straight away. We'll get straight into it, where everybody has gone. Is there any surprises in here? Full house. So Tommy Kerry, Will Kerry, Eoin Kerry, Adrian Kerry and Aisling is Kerry. Woo, I thought we might have one Galway. Yeah, I thought maybe Adrian might have went in there with a Galway. He likes to stir things up a little bit, doesn't he? What do you reckon, Tommy?
No comment. He's not here to defend himself.
So was it an easy decision for you?
I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be tight. I said that on the football pod during the week, and I said still take Kerry by 5. I think this game is going to hit a messy period with about 20-25 minutes to go when it's going to be in the melting pot. And I just think Kerry are going to pick up on what they did against Dublin and get through it. I just think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to collapse.
What is the messy period?
When Galway still have a chance and they drag them back into it, the way the Dubs dragged themselves back into that game against Kerry the last day, and it looked like Kerry collapsed, all the players around them pretty much. They couldn't get a score, apart from Paddy Clifford. And then Sean O'Shea steps up with that free at the very, very end. So I think that Galway are going to be in this game. I just think Kerry have enough on the pitch.
Yeah, I don't think Kerry would have went away from that game saying that they put in their best performance. I think they would have liked to have won out that game by at least 4 or 5 more. And for Con not to be playing for Dublin as well, I thought was a massive thing. Imagine they had Con. So I don't think it's all plain sailing. I don't think this is as straightforward as maybe some think. I think it's definitely going to go down to the wire. How are you feeling, Eoin?
Like 5 points from a prediction of 5 points from this weekend is something of a hammering, isn't it? Like given the way everybody expects
in an All-Ireland final.
Go.
Yeah, it kind of is on.
Like,
I
think that's a healthy enough one, but I'm not confident enough to say it'll be 5 points. And I think one of the really concerning things from the second half was actually just Kerry's attack, and I think that maybe the wind in the hill, and because Dublin were struggling to find their range in the first half, we've kind of got lulled into this narrative around Kerry in that second half that they just didn't have their shooting boots on. That David Clifford had 2 wides and therefore Kerry didn't have their shooting boots on. That actually wasn't the case whatsoever. I watched the game back and that felt the case at the time. But as the lads have mentioned on the football pod multiple times, the reality was that Kerry just lost their shape completely. They actually didn't have a whole pile of opportunities. Obviously, you've got Clifford going wide twice, which is big and memorable, and Stephen O'Brien picking the ball off the ground in the box, which is memorable, and Diarmuid O'Connor going short. But other than that, it was just actually maybe a lack of opportunities or a lack of good quality chances, which defined that second half for Kerry. So that's a real concern. That's how they left their semi-final. And that's what you'd be really, really worried about, because their attack is the thing that supposedly marks them out from the rest of the teams in the country. I think as well, when we're building up this game this weekend, I just think none of the defenders have got enough credit at all. Like there could be a case where the Galway full back line has a really good game as opposed to David Clifford and Sean O'Shea being off. Like, I mean, they've got to an All-Ireland final. Like, why can't Sean Kelly and Liam Silk and Glynn actually just have these brilliant games at the weekend, and it doesn't necessarily need to be down to Kerry having an off day? And by a similar token, why can't Jason Foley just go out and beat Damien Comer? Why does it have to be down to these forwards having an off day? I think we've sort of forgotten that these are potential all-star full back lines. There will be all-stars handed out to some of these full backs. And I think that they've been underrated so far. And I think that we still need to pay attention to how good these defences are as individuals. Yes, we've got 2 good systems, but I think there are some fantastic individuals in those full back lines. And I think that's going to be a really enjoyable part of the weekend, those individual matchups. Because, again, without repeating myself, I think the narrative has been, God, how do Galway cope? And how do they manage to stop the bleeding against the Kerry attack? And similarly with Kerry, it's like, how do they handle Comer? How do they handle Walsh? How do they stop the bleeding when the Galway forwards will surely run rings around them? I'm not sure that's going to happen. I think there's going to be a couple of individual battles that are going to be won by the defenders in the full back line this weekend.
Oh, and just on that, I actually think for both of these teams, the system is more important than the individual matchups. And
it's true.
I think, I just think it's hard to call some of those matchups, and it's hard to predict what's going to happen. Like, I know you're right in saying that Jason Foley could have a match-winning performance with Damien Comer, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. I think if Kerry are going to stop Damien Comer, it's the system around them. It's starving them of possession around the D. And likewise with David Clifford, if it's Liam Silk or it's Sean Kelly who's man-marking him, it's trying to get David Clifford out of the scoring range. But does David Clifford even have a scoring range? He's the type of footballer that can score on a half a step or 2 steps. He's so hard to stop, like.
I totally agree that the system is something that defines this defence, but I also think that within the system, I'm expecting a couple of big individual performances this weekend. We've seen it in the past. We've seen the old Tom O'Sullivan get man of the match in an All-Ireland final against Cork. And sometimes a cornerback can just step up, mark his man out of it, and come home with the man of the match award. And if we're expecting a cagey affair, that would play into the fact that we will not have one individual who's going to kick 1-5 potentially this weekend. I know that's famous last words, and Comer's going to score 2-4 now after saying that. And I'm also concerned about, a clean sweep of predictions here. This is like worse than the D2 advertisement, to be honest. And I'm personally on an absolutely horrific run of predictions right now. So you've all got on a terrible bandwagon by following my.
It'll be all your fault now on if they lose. So, Tommy, how do you think Kerry will cope with this system that Galway play? Because they haven't really came up against it very often yet in this championship, that defensive setup.
I think Kerry will be slicker and move the ball faster than Derry will have. I don't think Derry had the same options that Kerry have, obviously. I think we might see a slightly similar game to the Armagh game. There's a bit of chaos there. Like let's not kid ourselves here. The Galway system isn't perfect yet. It's been very good. It's been very impressive. But they creaked in the last 10 minutes against Mayo. Mayo nearly got back in that game, and Mayo don't have the shooters, as we famously know that the likes of Kerry do have. Roscommon were 9 points down and they nearly got it back. Armagh dragged it back to a draw into extra time. Derry just didn't have the options up top. They didn't have the variety in their attack. Even though they hit big scores all year, we just suspected that was going to happen. So Galway, as good as their defensive system has to be, they also have to click going forward. Like, that is so important for Galway this weekend. And same with Kerry. I think their defence, there's that statistic, they've only conceded 2 goals. One of them was a break, Costello, brilliant finish. The other one was McCurry's wonder goal down in the league. 2 goals from play. But I don't think they've been tested. I really don't. And I think, as you mentioned earlier on, Con missing the last day, I don't think that means that Dublin win by a point or Dublin win by 5. I think it changes the dynamic of the game completely. I actually think for about 50 minutes the last time, Kerry were maybe 7-8 points better than Dublin. But Dublin dragged them. This is one of the greatest Dublin sides we've ever seen. They've still got the hallmarks of that team. They've still got many of those players that have played in finals. There was no surprise that Dublin were able to drag themselves back into that. So, go on.
Like, I'm just on the point of not being tested. Like, so I agree with that on a wider sense, but just with regards to the defence, Tommy. So this is something that was picked up on earlier in the league, where this new system had been brought into play. So I think it is somewhat relevant. It's not totally relevant, but I think it's somewhat relevant to look at their defensive showings all throughout the year. When Kerry were scoring goals, what were they doing at the other end of the pitch? And this goes all the way back to playing an entire Division 1 campaign and conceding 1 goal from open play. I know it's not the same, but also you got to remember that Dublin have been scoring goals. They did not score 5 goals in the Leinster final this year as well. Dublin have been creating goal-scoring opportunities.
We can't.
And they had 2 chances. Sorry, they had 1 chance. You wouldn't even say the Costello goal was a chance in the All-Ireland final. The only goal chance they had was James McCarthy. And it was straight at the goalkeeper. Mayo had 1 goal chance, which was Kevin McLaughlin. So I would say they've given away 2 goal chances in 2 games against Mayo and against Dublin. And I know Mayo aren't what they once were. Neither are Dublin, but they are still in the top 5 teams in the country. Like, I mean, when you compare them to some of the teams that Galway have come up against as well, I don't know. I think the defensive thing is a real thing to cling to from a Kerry perspective. I don't think the jury is out whatsoever on that defence. I think the question is, can Galway get around what is proven to be an excellent defence when it comes to stopping goals?
I would have big questions over that, because it's a different sport in February, March. It's a different sport in Munster. Like, when it gets to Croke Park.
The last 2 games then.
But you've gone up against a Mayo attack minus Tommy Conroy, Ryan O'Donoghue, Killian O'Connor, who hasn't looked right all year. Like, a Mayo attack that had Jack Carney as a full forward, a midfielder turned into a full forward, whipped after 35 minutes. Kevin McLaughlin had the chance. Kevin McLaughlin butchered that chance. Should have been in the back of the net. Like Dublin didn't create a single goal chance against Cork. So Cork shut down Dublin in Croke Park. It'd be different if Cork shut down Dublin in Páirc Uí Rinn. They shut them down in Croke Park. They were blunt. That Dublin full forward line was pathetic the last day. It was very poor. Their runs, the shape that they had, they couldn't get into the game at all. Rock barely touched the ball that day. Like, it was very poor, the Dublin attack. Costello's break, that goal doesn't come unless it's a Kerry turnover on their own 45. Like, Dublin smelt blood. They went for it. It was a savage finish. Used the defender as a shield and put it in. But I really, really don't think they've been tested. Really don't think they've been tested.
What are you seeing in terms of the concerns then with regards to what Kerry have shown then? 'Cause it sounds like that you are expecting them to be open.
It's not that I'm concerned. It's that I'm just not buying it yet. It's just not buying it. Like, who have they gone up against?
Yeah, Dublin and Mayo. Like, I mean, who would you prefer?
Dublin and Mayo minus.
No, I get that. Who would you prefer them to go up against? Like, who is?
Well, now the pressure's on this weekend. They're going up against someone like Damien Comer, who's in the form of his life. Rob Finnerty, who's been picking off points left, right, and centre. You know, look, 100%. Derry put Christy McKaig and Rob Finnerty.
Okay, Eoin, last word from Eoin. Go ahead.
No, but the question is, Tommy, like, I get that, but like, we're talking about an All Ireland finalist this weekend. So
yeah,
who would be? Obviously, Galway are going to be a bigger test than everybody else. Like, I mean, I'm not arguing that whatsoever, but is there any other team out there that you would have liked to have seen Kerry go up against that would give you a better idea of how that defence is going up against? Because I would still consider, I know that they're missing players, both teams, but I would still consider Mayo and Dublin to be two pretty good teams with two pretty good attacks. Like, you could count on one hand the number of attacks that would give you a better idea of how Kerry are holding up now. Or
Dublin McCon, Owen. Like Dublin McCon, like 100% Dublin McCon. Like we saw what Dublin did against Kildare. Dublin McCon. 100%. He's a transformative footballer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We do have a leaderboard, so we're going to have a quick look at that before we have to wrap here. So, Aisling, 78%, Tommy. How do you like that?
How is that possible? I overtook you last week.
Because the maths was done wrong.
Oh, that's all right. Okay.
Well, this is what I'm told here. Tommy, you're 75%. We Will on 72%. Eoin 64% and Adrian on 64%.
That doesn't make sense. There's something fishy going on here. You may as well go for a score prediction this weekend then, and whoever wins it, wins it.
I know. We're happy enough, Tommy.
Score prediction, go on.
No, but but that doesn't that's not how we decide.
You didn't even make any predictions at the start, so you're actually missing games as well.
What do you mean? In what games did I not make a prediction?
Did you not miss the first couple of games?
No, Tommy, I did not miss. You actually missed a few of the games, if I remember correctly.
I don't think so.
Eoin, did he actually miss a few of the games?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Which games?
Factored into things.
Which games?
You were in New York. You were living it up.
I gave my quick picks. I always text them in.
No, I'm getting. They're shaking heads out here in the production box.
Not buying that.
Yeah, when I was in New York, I text Colum here and told him my quick picks.
I'm pretty sure I did. I'll go back and check that.
You sound a bit bitter here, Tommy. You don't like losing, do you?
No, I don't like losing.
Oh, well, anyway, we will see. We'll come and do this all again next Friday, and we'll have.
What do you think about Kerry's attack and Kerry's defence? Do you think they've been tested?
Say that again, sorry?
Do you think Kerry's defence have been tested?
I don't think either of these teams are their systems are fully up to scratch yet. I think they're both getting better game on game. I was surprised that Kerry weren't better against Dublin. So, yeah, I don't know if they fully have been tested. Look at the games I suppose they've had. Yes, a little bit against Mayo, maybe for 40 minutes or so. But other than that, then against Dublin. But again, I thought they were going to win by quite a bit more, considering there was no con. But yeah, I don't know. Galway, I'd be very afraid of their system, how they set up. I think for Kerry, they're going to need to move quick. As you said, they can't be like Derry. They can't be patient on the ball. They have to take a risk. They have to let that ball in quick, try and hit Clifford as soon as they break, because I think they'll get bottled up again once they break and Galway get back. So, yeah.
Aisling, sorry, Aisling. I think there's like two things that are possibly true here, and we just don't know. I mean, we'll know on Sunday. A, your theory is absolutely correct that Kerry have not been tested. Galway will score a couple of goals and we'll be like, okay, anybody who bought into the Kerry defence was wrong. Or B, there's a possibility here that Kerry have looked like they haven't been tested because of their defence against scoring goals, where they are happy enough to let teams play in front of them. And when it comes to goal chances, that is the very thing that they want to prevent. And that is why it looks like Kerry have not really been put under the pump when it comes to the goal scoring. Maybe that's a whole part of how the defence looks. As I said it out loud, that feels like a bit of a watery argument. So maybe maybe the former is going to be exactly the thing that happens this weekend. My opinion is different to that. My opinion is that this defence will hold up against goals. But I do think they'll give up one, maybe two goal chances. And who knows, maybe Comer's clinical enough to take both of them. And if they manage to get two chances, maybe that's all Galway need. Or maybe I'm wrong completely, and maybe they'll give up like 10 goal chances and it's just back to the way it was in 2019 again or last year.
It's so much better than it was last year, Owen. I'll give you that. It's so much better than it was last year.
Big time. You can see Paddy Talia's come in, and you can see that maybe Ulster-like sort of defending. It's brilliant to see. You definitely can see a big improvement against Tyrone last year. You could see that they were opened up. So absolutely, I can definitely see that it's a hell of a lot better. There's a lot of improvements, but I think we'll find out on Sunday whether it's fully been tested or not and where they're at. So that is your quick picks.
Have unbelievable time from, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Yes, a fiery quick picks there from Tommy and Eoin. We will get back to all of that next week, we promise. And OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Now we're back to Kerry again, Eoin. You met Kerry superfan Dan Dwyer. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so we heard a little bit earlier from Johnny Culloty. We went up the road then from Killarney to Kilcommon to meet Dan Dwyer, who has been going to All Ireland's since 1959. So 59 was Kerry Galway. It was his first All Ireland. I don't think he's missed an All Ireland ever since then. He gets to every game, and he sits in and around the Cusack stand where I sit with our season tickets, and he'll be there around section 306, 305, smoking his pipe before the game on Sunday if anybody wants to go up and say hello. An absolute gent. And I went to his house to meet him yesterday. Okay, we are here in Kilcommon in Kerry with one of Kerry's greatest and longest running fans, Dan Dwyer. Dan, how are you getting on?
Fine, thank you, Eoin. Welcome to Kilcommon.
Thank you very much. I was just saying I've come here directly from Johnny Culloty's house, the great Kerry goalkeeper, played for Kerry in both codes, and it turns out that you and Johnny actually worked with each other.
We worked together for 35 years.
Unreal.
35 years, yes. And a nice man to work with.
Yeah.
A gentleman.
St. Finian's Hospital in Killarney, the one that overlooks Fitzgerald Stadium.
Right, it's closed now about 10 years and nothing done with it so far.
The reason why I wanted to come out and have a chat with you, Dan, is just because of the fact that you've been going to Kerry games for so long. So when was your first All-Ireland?
My first All-Ireland was in 59, Kerry and Galway, and the score was 3-7 to Kerry, 1-4. To Galway, but I was only 13 and a half, and I went with a friend of mine from Park Road, a man called Jack Ryan, who's now in London. And I remember going up on the train that morning. That was my first final. And I suppose I remember it for the reason that Mick O'Connell was centre field, and he was getting a rough time from what's his name, the Galway player?
Purcell?
No, Sean Purcell and Stockwell, they were just finishing up. That time there were two great players there. He was a big strong for the sort of field. But in here, Connell got calf injured, and they brought out Tom Long, who was playing the 40. They brought Long out. Oh, Frank Ivers was the name of the man. He was Mackin O'Connell. He's a big, strong man. He was an army man. But I remember they bringing out O'Connell. They bring out Tom Long out of the field, and he rectified the situation, and they won well. They won well the same day, yeah.
Were Galway well respected at that time?
You see, they had a lot of good players, like, as I say, Purcell now, who a lot of people in Ireland will tell you was probably one of the best all-round footballers they ever saw, but he was just going off at that stage. You know, he was well into his 30s, and Stockwell as well, but they were known as, as the Tomb Twins, and they were respected and known all over Ireland. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They were great players. But that was my first final now, to 63 years ago, but I try to recall some of the... But I know the man that went with me on the train that year, and we were, of course, our first time in Dublin, excited, coming home on the train, yeah.
Was it usually the train that you got up and down to those matches in those days?
Yes. There'd be a couple of trains leaving Killarney and arriving home that evening. They would be in Killarney about 10:30 or 11 o'clock. And the trains used to be packed that time. All the people from South Kerry, they'd drive up to Killarney and get on the thing, and then they'd have to drive home again down to Portmagee and Village Island and all them places. But there wouldn't be as many going nowadays. Some of them will go from Fadenford by airport. More of them will drive it. More goes in the buses, Kerry supporters bus, whom I do travel with now most of the time. But that time to all the train.
Can I ask you then, Dan, there's... living in Dublin, people like to give me a bit of stick because Kerry people don't travel to matches there, or so they like to say. What's been your experience down through the years of the level of attendance from Kerry people at games in Croke Park?
Well, I suppose there's a point in it. Like, I suppose, you know, if Kerry were playing a quarter-final of the All Ireland Championship above in Dublin, you might have only maybe about 10,000 Kerry people, whereas when it comes to the final, you'll probably have 25 and 30,000, because a lot of the people living in Dublin from Kerry, they will want to go to the final, and they seem to get tickets maybe easier than some of the people that are going the whole time. But like, I'd say that is true now. Like, if you take the cock huddlers, if the cock huddlers are going well, even in the Munster final, you could have 25,000 cock people. And if it was an All Ireland final, Mayo the same way. Mayo, I would say Mayo are probably the best followers that I have ever come across. But the real Kerry genuine follower will go to all the championship games and most of the league games if he can at all. The fella that's kind of we call a watery fella. He'll only go to a game that he thinks will be a good game.
I don't get the sense that you're a watery fella at all. You go to most of the games, do you?
Well, I go to all the championship games and most of the league games. I would say that I have never missed an All Ireland final or a semi-final since '59. That's 63 years ago. The only game I missed was Kerry and Armagh in the championship there a number of years ago. The Kerry beat Armagh. The Dadden got a goal in the last 3 minutes to clinch it. I was in America at that time. Right. I was in American holidays, so I missed that game. But that was the only championship game I missed. I don't think I missed many league games either. Yeah. No, I go to them all if I can at all.
What's the plan for the weekend? Any traditions around All Ireland weekend from your perspective that you tend to do other than the match?
No, well, I'm going up by bus. I go out to Kerry supporters. Sometimes I go up with them, more times I go by train, and more times I go by car. But I usually go out to Kerry supporters. We'll be leaving Fadfor now Sunday morning at 7 o'clock. And we'll have arrived to the Putty Still about 10:30, 11:15. And we'll have our breakfast there. And then we'll head on from Mount Joy Square, park the bus, and walk around the city for a while, and then into the game. And on our way home then that night, around 7:30 or 8 o'clock, we'll be calling for our lunch to the Putty Still. So that will be our day. We'll arrive home then, probably into Fadden maybe 11 o'clock, 11:30. And then if we win, of course, the celebrations Monday night, and that'll be only starting. If they do win, it will be going down to Kenmare, and I hope to be going down there if I'm alive. Johnny Shea, even though I don't know him personally, know his mother, I'd be going down there. And I have a habit of going to places when they do win the Sam Maguire. I actually went down to when Declan Sloan was captain in 2006. I drove down of a bad night. I had a mini car at the time. I drove down to Drummond, and then I coming home that night. The storm was so bad that it was actually rocking the car, and it was around 3 o'clock in the morning. But it was a great night. I mean, it was great to think in a small club like the Drummond that you were the captain of the Kerry team and you were the trainer, Jack O'Connor. I know both of them, and I did think it would be a great night, and there was a couple of more from Killarney there as well. But I enjoyed that night better than if I was over in Tralee in the middle of 20,000. Yeah. Meeting people, and South Kerry people in general are very, very friendly, and I enjoyed the night immensely. Then when Dadden won it, when Dadden was captain in 09, there was a great night in Glenbear. There was thousands turning up there that night. So I do go to a lot of these functions too. I like meeting people and having the crack and talk about olden days and who's good enough for the Kerry team and who isn't, and it's all part of the Kerry way.
Yes, Kerry superfan Dan Dwyer there, and you can catch the full interview across our social channels and on the OTB Sports podcast network. I know, and that wasn't the only Kerry legend you met. You also met with Mickey Ned O'Sullivan.
Yeah, it should probably, like Mickey Ned was probably the first person I met yesterday, and obviously there's been a bit of a Kenmare tint to the show this morning, and that was probably deliberate. You can't really get around to everywhere in Kerry in the space of a few hours, so decided to do a few pieces in Kenmare and work my way up from there, just on the back of obviously O'Shea's kick in the semi-final and just the general influence that area of Kerry has had on the team, obviously with Temple No as well as Kenmare with O'Shea and Stephen O'Brien, and then Temple No with the two Spillans with Tig Morley and Gavin Crowley on the team. So it's just an extraordinary contribution from such a small club in Temple No to the Kerry team. So that area is really hopping right now, and one of their most famous players before the current era is, of course, Mickey Ned O'Sullivan. So I went into his house and we had a great chat about his own playing days, about some of his coaching. He coached the Springboks at one stage, which we get into in this conversation. And then we, of course, preview the big game on Sunday. Okay, we have made it to Kenmare, and I'm delighted to say that Mickey Ned O'Sullivan has welcomed us into his home. Mickey, it's great to see you. How are you keeping?
Excellent. Looking forward to Sunday, and hopefully we'll have the right result.
Yeah, I decided to give you a shout and to come down to Kenmare because Kenmare is really on vogue right now. Not that you need any reminding about Sean O'Shea or Stephen O'Brien and even the Temple No lads, your neighbours here, but it really feels that the club and the clubs around this area are on a high right now, especially after Shawnee's kick the last day.
Yes, there's great excitement and euphoria building, and you have actually 7 guys in the panel at the moment from the district, which is unprecedented. And it's a great reflection of the clubs, Temple No and Kenmare, and even Kilgarvan, and to assist. And you see, it's a great reflection of all the work that has been done at underage in the clubs. And as the players grew up, they went to Pobbleskull in Verskena. All the players went there, and they came under the tutelage of Tom Connor, who has a very interesting role model for people all over the country. He took over the team when he was 70. He had retired in the hotel business, and he spent the last 10 or 12 years, and he's in his 80s now, and he's still organising the football in the Pobbleskull in Verskena. So a great role model for everybody around the country, never throwing the towel.
Absolutely. It's amazing, isn't it, how the schools sort of give a huge kick to certain areas, like whether it's out in Dingle under Fitzmaurice, and the SEM obviously down through the years has been such a big factor. So this isn't necessarily two rival parishes coming side to side. They are, of course, that when they're on the club pitch. Yes. I think these lads would have been friends growing up and very close already.
Yes, they all play together. They all grew up together. In fact, also, not to mention, there's Julie O'Sullivan, who's also went to the school. She's playing for the Kerry ladies in the All Ireland the following week, which is a great reflection on the culture of the school as well.
How does it differ from the Kenmare that you grew up in terms of the football prowess of the area?
Well, at that, you see, it's probably, when I was growing up, Temple No, Kenmare, Kilgarvan, to assist, were all the one team in the county championship. But because they are now a victim of their success, Temple No have become a senior team, Kenmare has become a senior team. I've no doubt about it. They'd be winning county championships had this not happened, if they were both still playing together.
Right.
So it's a plus for the clubs, it's a minus for the district.
Okay. So what has changed then in terms of the individual greatness of all these teams? Like you mentioned the school already. Are there other factors at play in this area?
I think that the good leadership in the clubs, excellent people involved at all levels, at underage level up to senior level, and they have nurtured and developed the players and their skills and their prowess. So it's leadership from the bottom up rather than the top down.
Am I right in saying as well that around the time you would have been an underage player, hurling would have been a bit more of an influence as well in this area?
Yes. I grew up playing probably more hurling than football, and until I became minor underage, then we kind of had to concentrate on the football. But traditionally, hurling was the dominant game in the area. But now, obviously, over the last 30 or 40 years, football has taken a priority, but hurling's still strong.
So where is it, like the Kenmare people are dual players? Is there a divide when you get to a certain point, or who are the hurling folk in this area?
No, and I'm involved with the club senior football team. There are 8 or 9 of the footballers involved in the hurling team. So it's a dual It's a dual club. Makes it difficult for both hurling and football, but you have to, that is the right of players. They have the right to play both games, and you must respect that.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you often see people from this part of the county on the county hurling team, and it's like this little oasis of hurling that exists nowhere near North Kerry. So what's the historic reasoning for that, do you know?
I suppose traditionally Kilgarvan and Kenmare were hurling strongholds. They have all, going back 130 years, hurling was the dominant game, and it was tradition. And they had won more county championships in hurling than football. So football, I suppose that the big factor I can remember is there was a guard stationed to Kenmare. He was an Offaly man called P.J. McIntyre in the 60s. And he was into football. And he started all the youngsters around playing underage, coached them, kept the pressure on them, and gradually all these lads came together and won a county championship in 1974, and that was really the beginning. Okay. And it has obviously grown since.
From your own perspective then, I guess it would have always been very hard to turn your back on football after the underage success that you mentioned there, and just getting onto the senior panel with Kerry at such a young age. What I'm really interested in is those early years with the Kerry panel, when you would have gone in there and you would have seen the two Micks, the two great Micks, Mick O'Dwyer, Mick O'Connell, right at the end of their playing days. What was that experience like as a young fella who I'm sure acutely recognised the greatness of the two men you shared a dressing room with?
It was a great privilege. I joined the panel when I was 18, and for the first 2 or 3 years they were still on the team, and you respected them, you stood back, you admired them, you learned from them, and it was a great privilege to be on the same team as Mick O'Connell or Mick O'Dwyer. And then it was a transition stage. They were coming to the end of their career, all that age group, and then our group were gradually coming in. But contrary to what people think, we lost championship for 4 years before we won in 1975. And it's very similar to, I remember me discussing this with Johnny Shea recently. I said, it was very beginning of the year, it was a bit down. He says, look, I'm in there 5 years and I've won nothing. I says, that's the learning process. We did the same. Most of us were in there for 4 or 5 years before we won any championship. So, you see, a team goes through a growth stage, a performance stage, and a decline. The growth stage, no team comes overnight. And the growth stage is where you learn from your defeats and you take everything on board, just as Kerry, this present Kerry team has done. They have had agonising defeats, but they've come back, they have learned, they have rectified situations that didn't work out. It was a learning process. And no team develops overnight. Rarely, only the exception. So it takes, what it takes, it's a journey of learning from, you have to learn from your mistakes, from your disappointments, and it improves the resolve. That's why I feel Kerry have had the learning process. They have the growth process. They are now in the performance stage. They haven't been beaten. They conceded 3 goals this year in the championship, and they're now in the performance stage. Whereas Galway are still, hopefully, they're still will be learning from the disappointment on Sunday, because Kerry age structure is about 26. They're at the ideal stage, whereas Galway have probably a wider base of age structure. But I think that Kerry now are in the performance stage. they can continue in that stage for as long as they're hungry. And as long as they keep, hopefully they'll win on Sunday, and they looked at that, how can we be better? Just like the Limerick hurlers.
Yeah.
Limerick have brought this to a fine heart. And they push back the decline. If the hunger, like Dublin did in the football, they extended, they kept the succession planning to perfection. They kept players hungry. They kept players fighting for their positions. Whereas if you put out the same team again next year after winning, you're on the decline.
Yeah, you need fresh blood, a couple of new faces every year.
Going back to your question about from 70 to 75, that was a transition stage.
You had the lads in decline, really, didn't you?
Yes.
The two mixed in decline.
And then you had the younger lads, the Paddy Lynch's, the John O'Keefe's. They were all in the learning, the growth stage.
That's a really interesting contrast between those two generations of players then. What I'm interested in is, from your own memories, how do players like Mick O'Connell deal with the decline stage? You know, knowing all your life that you've been one of the best players in the country, if not ever, and realising that age remains unbeaten.
Yes, I presume he never declined.
He walked away.
He walked away before he declined.
Yeah.
And he probably saw these lads that weren't born when he was playing in the Kerry team, which is a fact.
Yeah.
And then he says, probably it's about time that I took the circus off the road, you know?
You rode off into the sunset.
Yes. And the same with Mick. And they both continued with their clubs.
Are you surprised, sorry, Mickey, that Mick O'Dwyer became the very visible face of Kerry GAA after that, and Mick O'Connell retreated literally to Valencia for a while? Did you always notice that in their characters?
Not necessarily. Mick O'Connell was a perfectionist. And he probably, it was about perfection of the game. I'd say he wasn't interested in management. Mm-hmm. Once he had done it, he had made his mark, and he did other aspects of his life. Mick was involved probably in his club as a trainer, and the natural progression then was he had great leadership qualities, good management skills, and was to progress. They were different personalities.
Yeah, very much so. It certainly seems that way.
Yeah.
What then do you think Mick O'Dwyer saw in you as a teammate and then as a player for him that he thought you'd make a good coach, a good selector?
I don't know. I'd say the reason because at the time I was doing a degree in physical education in London, and the perception of physical education was fitness. And the obvious thing was we need some guy at the time. That was the nearest thing to sports science.
You were the cutting edge.
Yeah, and we need to get this guy in because he has been abroad. He has seen how they do it in soccer and rugby. Maybe he might benefit us and bring it to another new level.
Okay. When Mick O'Dwyer departs as Kerry manager, is there this shadow that constantly lingers for people like yourself, for all the managers that managed in the 10 years after, even if you didn't appreciate it at the time? In hindsight, was that the case?
Not necessarily, because you understood it was a transition.
Sure.
And most people would have advised me, don't touch it.
Right.
There's a no-win situation here.
People were telling you that?
Yes. But I felt I was asked to do the job. I will do it to the best of my ability, and I will take them to the next level. And that's what I went in to do. Try and make the transition. We knew that the transition would be slow because I had been involved in the previous management structure. And there was a mistake made. There was no succession planning. And at that stage, I actually left the management team because there was no interest in succession, because you can understand Mick's point of view was these lads have given me everything. I'm not going to be dropping them.
Of course.
And we'll play him to the end. And I can see his loyalty. But I could see the picture that succession was vital. Otherwise, we were going to go into a vacuum. Mm-hmm. And when I went in then, I had to get rid of guys that wanted to stay on and were, in my opinion, on the decline.
Yeah.
And I asked, could I have the under-21s? And I brought in 20 under-21s to the senior panel.
One fell swoop.
Yeah.
Right.
So there was no way you were going to start winning anything, but you had to grow these. So we won the under-21 All Ireland that year. And we went to the All Ireland again the following year. And we won the Munster again the following year. So that was the basis of the 97 team. But it was going to be a slow process. I was under no illusions. And in Kerry, the whole thing is you have to win in All Ireland. I knew that, but I had to have my own targets and goals. Otherwise, I was in a loser for, I was just going to get a lot of stick and not take it. But I had no problem with the stick because I had my own goals.
Yeah.
Taking the players to the next level.
How bad was the stick?
I never felt it. Right. There was no social media. There was no... It wasn't the thing that time.
Okay.
It's social media and media. There was very little media at that time. There was maybe 2 or 3 papers. That was it. And you'd get your raps, but that was natural. That went with the role. So you just did your job. What you thought was the right thing, you didn't give a damn what people said, because you felt you were on the right track. And that was it.
It's interesting, we had Darragh O'Cinneide on a show a few weeks ago before the Dublin match, and he was saying that he kind of alluded to the fact that Ogie doesn't get anywhere near enough credit for the foundations he laid for Paddy. Yes. Like, it does feel that there's Micko, then Paddy, and everybody in between just kind of gets forgotten about as a Kerry manager sometimes.
Same thing will happen to Peter O'Kane.
Yeah.
Peter O'Kane has gone through the growth stage of this team, but Jack will get the benefit. And that's about timing. Mm. And Jack is good at timing. And so the same thing, Peter Kane will get Ogie didn't get the credit of building that team. And but that's management. You can achieve anything in management as long as you're not worried who gets the credit.
Well, I was just about to ask that question, actually. Maybe it's not for you then. Maybe do you think in general managers like Ogie are actually okay with that they know themselves what they did, even though nobody's giving them credit?
Yes, that's it. Theodore Roosevelt said that. He says you can achieve anything as long as you're not worried about who gets the credit.
It's a good saying.
And that is the ultimate in... If you have to manage, you manage from the bottom up and you give everybody credit. It isn't about yourself. That's the old-fashioned where it came from the top down. Management now is about developing everybody, management and players to contribute to the common goal. And that's basically, everybody going into management now knows that.
Yeah. Was there a particular moment in modern Gaelic games where you realised that everybody is now thinking that way?
The vast majority of people understand that now, that go into management, that it's about the people you get on the bus, the people that you can't be an expert in every area. You look for what you think the best person in strength and conditioning, the best coach, the best physio, the best psychologist. But not alone that, can we work together? That is very important. Have these people an ability? You see, you can bring in somebody and you don't click with them. That causes, it's like a cancer then in the group. It wears it, it cuts, it eats into the effectiveness and to the core and the values. So it's very important that you understand the personality and know the personality of the person you're bringing in, and that you work well together. And there are no egos. Ego is the enemy. And so that's the ultimate, that people are in it for the right reasons. Okay. And they're in it to make their contribution. And basically, if they get credit, so what? But ultimately, they're making their contribution for the overall target or the overall goal.
There's two things I want to ask you about on the back of that, two of your own personal situations. We'll come back to you as Limerick manager and your work with maybe Cian O'Neill in just a moment. But before that, it's the other side of things, you being brought in to a camp. And one of the most fascinating parts of your career, in my opinion anyway, is the South Africans picking up the phone to you all those years ago. For those that have forgotten, what actually happened at that point and how did that come about?
It came about that so the Springboks were worried about their ability to catch the ball.
This was 2005 direction, was it?
Yes, 2005. And they got on to Conor O'Shea. And Conor O'Shea recommended me. And I went out with Jonathan Callard. He was fullback for England, I suppose, in the 90s, and he was the English kicking coach. And they wanted to improve kicking and aerial skills. And both of us went out and we worked in with the 5 Super 12 teams, or Super 14 teams that time, I think. The Blue Bulls, the Cheetahs and these. And we worked with them first, and then Jake White brought us in to work with the Springboks. And it was an interesting concept, because I asked him why, and he said, if, for example, an out half kicks the ball and the winger, he kicks it towards the winger and the winger catches it over his head and down, he says it could be the winning between winning the World Cup and losing the World Cup, just into small details. And the first day I was with them, I couldn't believe how big these guys were and how uncoordinated a lot of them were. So I says to him, how come these guys are so big? And he says, 180 years ago when the Europeans came out here, they went out into the bush, he said, working in agriculture. And he says only the biggest and the strongest survived. And he says the DNA, or the average South African is, he gave me stats, so much heavier and bigger than the average European white.
Right.
So, and that was the reason. But they weren't that coordinated, but they had to work on it,
Okay.
But it was an interesting experience.
So you're doing like high ball drills with them basically,
Yes,
was it?
yes.
Okay.
And it was interesting, the first day I met the team, the Springboks, and they said, Jake White was trying to give a background where I was coming from. And very few of them knew about Gaelic games. So I says, I'll give you 10. I brought the 2005 Tyrone versus Kerry match in a DVD.
Well, could you not have picked a better one, no?
So I said, I'll show you 10 minutes of the game that I'm involved in. So they sat back anyway, and after the 10 minutes, we want to watch it all. So, and then they
You turned it off before Canavan's goal, obviously.
And they couldn't believe that there was 80,000 people and these guys weren't being paid.
Yeah.
And they couldn't believe the speed and the big thing was how they could exploit space. And they felt that's what they could bring from Gaelic football, breaking the line, creating penetration. And then they asked me to do something on that.
Right.
And but the interesting thing, when I was talking, I spotted this guy. He was one of the coaches, and I recognized him. It was David Campisi.
Okay.
He scored a famous try in 91, I think, in Lansdowne Road against Ireland in the World Cup. Yeah. So I said, there's a guy there knows probably more than I do about high catches from the Aussie rules. And David was a very quiet guy. So I brought him on board with me in the drills and things, because he had actually played Aussie rules as well. So that was an interesting development there. And so no, it was then Conor got feedback, and Conor asked me would I get involved with the English development squad up in Yorkshire, up in York. And I says, Christ, I can't let anyone in Ireland know that I'm doing this, you see.
And did you do it?
I did, yeah. And I just went over a couple of times into York, I think it was in York. And that was an interesting development as well, and how they were developing. Conor was involved. He was a kind of development officer for the English Rugby Union at the time.
Okay,
yeah.
And obviously still involved with the English
Yes.
Rugby Union at the moment
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
Right, okay. And is that where your rugby coaching career ended?
Well, I had played, the only game I played in when I was in Strawberry Hill was rugby. It was the nearest to Gaelic football.
Okay.
So I had a good experience of rugby over 4 years.
You should say as well, obviously, it was an England-South Africa World Cup final in 07. South Africa got the job done. The Mickey Ned O'Sullivan derby, I didn't realise that's what it was. So you taught Brian Habana how to catch a high ball?
Yes, he was in the team at the time, yes. And he was young, he was only about 19.
Yeah.
But he was very well built and very fast. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Back to the Gaelic games then, and I mentioned that I did want to talk about the other side of things, being the coach who brings people in. When you talk about that growth mindset that exists from a managerial standpoint, everybody's talking about Pádraig Joyce this week and his decision to enhance his own coaching ticket with people like Cian O'Neill.
Yes.
I think you were the first person to ever give Cian a chance at inter-county level.
That's right. I'd heard about him, and he was coaching a junior club in Clare at the time, and I rang him and met him and was impressed by him. So he was brought in then as a strength and conditioning person, and spent 2 years and had a very positive input into development of these Limerick players at the time. The good mindset, good attitude, good approach. And then he went to Tipperary and moved into more of, I think he was still in the strength and conditioning, but went from there to Mayo and got into the coaching side of things then. And no, it was very good. He was very professional in every way.
Did you see that there was something there, that this guy was very ambitious to succeed?
Very ambitious. And he wasn't going to stay with us.
Okay.
And that was, you could see that he was ambitious.
One last point there on Cian, just about the transition from strength and conditioning into kind of more of a tactical coach. Is that an unusual pathway for a young coach in GAA?
It is, because generally speaking, strength and conditioning people, in the management thing, there isn't a big crossover between the strength and conditioning and the coach. And from a manager's point of view, you give your slot to the strength and conditioning person, and you give the slots to the coaching. But I know there's a lot of interaction as well between both. But generally speaking, strength and conditioning people stay within that area that they're qualified in, and the coaches then are a more broader perspective, because they come from a football point of view. So they wouldn't have the knowledge of the strength and conditioner, and they would stick to usually the football side of things.
Okay, so he's obviously managed to shatter that glass ceiling in some regards.
Yes.
Just a couple of other things, Mickey Ned. I was looking at the forecast for Sunday. It's going to rain. You know all about playing All Ireland finals in the wet and the rain. 1975, obviously, it wasn't the best day. Obviously, you can't possibly have memories of that full game after what happened. I'm interested just in that moment. Is that something that you kind of look back at and laugh at? Is it something that you're proud of? I mean, it's such a unique moment in such a big game, and at the same time, it's a terrible, horrific moment for you in that moment.
Well, it just happened, and you accept it. The most important thing was the lads went on and won the All Ireland.
Yeah.
And you don't think about it, these things happen.
Yeah.
You don't have a regret, or you accept it, and you enjoyed the few minutes you were there, and you move on.
Yeah.
It just, that was part of the game. And the interesting thing about it, the person who was reputed to have knocked me out has become a very good friend. Because every time we go to Dublin, we'll give a ring, or any time he's down, we touch base, we might have a drink or a meal. And it led to a great friendship. And we have never discussed that situation.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
You've never talked about it?
No.
Who is it?
Sean Doherty.
It is Sean Doherty.
Yeah.
Yes,
And we've what goes on the field, you leave it on the field and you move on. And you have a lot more in common than you don't have.
Yeah.
And football is about, it's a journey, and it's about the people you meet, and you have so much in common, and you have kept, because you have a similar, we'll say, gone through a similar pathway, you have a lot in common, and those friendships blossom outside of the football field. So it's you leave everything. What goes on the field stays on the field, you know.
It's a good way to be. Were you going to pass the ball, or were you going to go for goal?
I haven't a clue. I haven't a clue, but I've seen once or twice, I saw it, and I think I could have passed it. I think Hoagie was running alongside me, and I was probably obsessed with scoring a goal, and didn't. I should have passed the ball, but that's life.
Did you pass the ball more after that moment?
No, I don't think so. Didn't learn my lesson. So that's basically. I don't remember an awful lot more about that game.
No, but it is one of the more iconic moments of an All Ireland, and an All Ireland in the rain in particular. Yeah. Just to fast forward then to 2022, then you mentioned there talking to Sean O'Shea a few weeks ago, or at the start of the season, I should say. How proud were you to see him kick that kick? I mean, every Kerry person probably got a sense of pride, but just given the fact that you know the man, given the fact that he is your neighbour.
I was 100% sure he was going to kick it right over the bar. Because any time I go to the football field, he has 15 balls in the middle of the day, and he's practicing. His mental resolve is phenomenal. Once I saw him put Shane Ryan, didn't allow Shane Ryan to kick the ball. He was a captain. He took responsibility. I knew he was going to score. Because, you know, he has such a discipline, a self-discipline that he has worked on over the years. And he doesn't say much, but he leads by example, and he demands a very high standard of himself. Mm-hmm. And he's a perfectionist in terms of kicking, his ability to kick frees. Mm-hmm. He works. He's a great role model, both on and off the field. And I couldn't speak highly enough of him as a person and as a leader. He's a I don't know, are they born leaders? I think leadership is learned, but he certainly has learned it.
Okay. Did people in Kenmare always know he was going to be this good?
Up to about 16 years of age, you didn't. But then he began to develop. He developed his game, but he developed physically as well. And he's developed himself enormously from a physical point of view, because he wasn't structurally that strong. But I'm telling you wouldn't want to hit in against him now.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
He said on our show a few years ago that he took a year out after the Leaving Cert, because he did it when he was 16, and he was working for the family business, which allowed him to become a professional minor footballer, I think was his phrase. So it's that work ethic you speak to, and that year in particular, I think that made a big difference.
Yes, and I suppose we're very fortunate in Kenmare now that he's got a job in the local public school.
He's working back here now, is he, right?
He's teaching.
Okay, I thought so he used to be teaching in Cork, obviously.
He was just doing his dip. He's in Colossus 3, I think he was, but he's full time now in Kenmare, which is great, and all the students you look up to him, you know, because he's a great leader and he's a good teacher as well, you know.
And is that his chairman of the club, is he?
He was chairman. But his 5 years was up, but he's still running the club, you know. He's exceptionally. His dad played for Kerry Minor as well, centre back. I don't know what year now, but I get mixed. As you get older, you can't pick out the years. No, he lives football, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what's required. And you have to eat and sleep it. And he certainly does it, you know, and he leads by example. And he doesn't say much, but he leads. What he says is worth listening to.
100%.
Yeah.
Are Kerry going to win on Sunday?
I would think so. But then again, you have to be careful. Anything can happen in the heat of battle. But I think that the stage, as I already mentioned, that Kerry are at, they're in the performance stage, whereas I still think Galway are in the growth stage. And I think that gives the tips the balance in Kerry's. I think it's going to be low scoring first half. I think Galway will close down all the channels, and maybe after 45 minutes it will open up. And I think then Kerry will finish stronger.
Okay.
You know?
Very good. Mickey Ned, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Thanks a million for being so generous with your time. And hopefully it's another great day for Kenmare and the Kenmare district as a whole on Sunday.
Hopefully, looking forward to it.
Yes, fascinating stuff there with Mickey Ned O'Sullivan. You can catch that interview across the Off the Ball social channels and on our podcast network. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. And here's what we've got on OTB Sports Radio today. At 1 p.m, we've OTB Gold inside Porrick Harrington's Gaff. 3 p.m, live Friday night racing. 4 p.m, the latest episode of Koi Gig podcast. And at 6 p.m, we've the OTB Gold, Michael Eoin. Follow Off the Ball across all our social channels, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and be sure to download the OTB Sports app for the latest in the best sports content and analysis. Now we're back after the break with Eoin's chat alongside Marina Barry, holder of 10 All Ireland medals. Eoin, we're talking about a living legend in Kerry.
Yeah, absolutely. The last stop on the trip yesterday was to go up to Tralee to meet Marina Barry. She was part of the team that, as you say, won 10 All Irelands, 9 All Irelands on the bounce, and it is 40 years ago this year since that run began. 1982, obviously not a great year when it comes to the top of the minds of Kerry football fans. They were obviously done by Seamus Darby and that goal for Offaly to stop the 5 in a row. But in 1982, the same year, the women were also in a final, also against Offaly, but they did manage to win that one. And that was going to become the first of 9 All-Ireland titles in a row. It was an absolutely obscene run that they went on. Of course, in a couple of weeks' time, on Sunday week, they're going to be in an All-Ireland final, as well as they go for the men's and women's finals. The first time
since 1986 that Kerry are in both finals. So Marina was a key part of that team, which included so many Kerry legends. A lot of them just don't like doing interviews, which almost kind of enhances the legend around them a little bit. So thankfully she managed to agree to sit down with me yesterday evening. We'll bring you that chat after the break.
Brilliant. We're back after this.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
This summer, we're bringing you double Koi gig.
I thought that was going to be a much tighter game.
I cannot tell you the audible gasps that there were in the press box yesterday. They looked as stunned as the team on the pitch did.
I thought that they were stronger than that. I thought that they were tactically more aware than that.
For the best insight and analysis from this summer's Euros, subscribe to the Koi Gig Pod on the OTB Sports app now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
You know, I always felt at the time just trying to get facilities was difficult. You had your management team, you know, with the county board, but you've got to remember that the women and the men were separate. So we wouldn't have had the same access to facilities. But so even getting, you know, fields to train on and things like that was difficult. There wouldn't have been much money for, you know, food or, you know, before games and things or after games. But nowadays, and even access to fields, you know, to get Croke Park to play in All Ireland. And, you know, when I was watching games with my dad and my family way back in the 70s, 80s, you know, we used to watch on TV and you'd see Kerry Dublin playing, you know, amazing games, and our own club mates would have been playing, the likes of Gerard Power, Mikey Sheehy, John O'Keefe. And these, you know, they were playing Croke Park, and I automatically thought that's where we'd play the All-Ireland, but that didn't happen for us until 1986. So we would have been playing it, you know, around the country, but no place that I would have thought was a big stadium. But we got to play there in 1986, which is huge. So for me, that was like, yeah, this is real now. This is what the All-Ireland is about. But before that, because I suppose ladies football was only beginning its journey as such, but nowadays it has totally improved, and it's great to see the support that the girls are getting. But it didn't take from the enjoyment. Sure. But for me, I always wanted to play in Croke Park, so to get access to it was a huge step forward for us at the time.
86, the last time Kerry were on the hunt for the double, actually, as it turns out. So I presume that year, just because of the Croke Park reason, is that as special as any of the other years, that first final in Croke Park for you?
It's one of them up there. There was one before that. Was that in 93? 86? No, 86 probably the first. Beyond that, it wasn't even in Croke Park. There was another game that we had won the 9 in a row. So we were playing Waterford, who were a huge team back in the day. And every Munster final, we'd play Waterford. And I mean, those wins were narrow by us, but we just managed to get over the line. But there was one, we had gone to the 9 in a row, lost. So in 93, we were playing them again in Killarney in Fitzgerald Stadium, and that was a ding-dong of a game. It was point for point. They were ahead, we were ahead, and then there was about maybe 40 seconds left in the game, and it was a draw at this stage, and I got the ball into my hand, a good bit out now on the right-hand side, on the stand side, and I just said, let's go for it, and it thankfully floated over. I don't know how it did, but that for me probably was one of the better games that I remember. It wasn't even a final, but it was a game that really, it was a ding-dong battle. People were getting heart. My dad was, people were getting heart attacks. It was so close and so intense, So it was, there were games. It didn't have to be finals, but a lot of the games were very competitive and really, enjoyable. So we went on then to win that one again in 93, which was the last of our All-Irelands, really, yeah.
What's interesting is that whenever we speak to anybody from the great 9 in a row teams, you're a very modest bunch, and it's very, very hard to get anybody to kind of talk about the the run full stop and then to talk about how excellent the team was. So I'm going to ask you to talk about one of your teammates instead of yourself for a moment. And Mary Jo Curran is one player who gets kind of spoken about quite a bit, possibly the most recognisable name on that team. Just for people who weren't maybe old enough to have seen her in her pomp for Kerry, how good a player was she?
Well, Mary Jo was so good that she could nearly have kicked the ball out from goals herself. She could have been the goalkeeper. If she kicked it out, she then would have been able to go out, catch it in midfield, solo, do a few dummies and put it over the bar. Really, that is how good she was. She, like that, very shy, didn't want to talk about herself, but she could glide, she could catch, she was graceful. Yeah, she was everything. I'd say she must have got an All-Star every year. And, didn't want to know about how, that she was so good, but she got us out of trouble. Now, not saying it's a team game at the end of it. Everyone has to, be involved, the subs especially as well. There were a lot of people on the panel. But yeah, if you were to pick anybody, Mary Jo in my era, and even to this day, she's one there that you put up there that was just majestic, a lady, unselfish, all those words that you talk about somebody. And yeah, if you wanted to get out a bit of bother, if you wanted a little goal at the back of the net, she could just go the length of the field and slot it through. So she is one of the all-time greats, absolutely, with the Kerry team.
I do think she's appreciated within Kerry, but maybe nationally, do you think maybe more appreciation needs to go for her as like one of the all-time greats in Gaelic games, full stop?
Yeah, absolutely. And she played basketball as well, and she was as good at that. So she kind of finished in, I think, early with Kerry because she wanted to focus on basketball as well. So definitely people do know her around the country as a super athlete, I suppose, first and foremost, whether it be football or basketball. Mary Jo is a name that is well known. Yeah.
Can I ask then about the year the run ends? Going for 10, I presume, was like this lovely round number to get to, and of course it would have taken a brave person to bet against you that year. So what did happen that year, and how did that feel to actually lose again?
I think I remember more the time we lost when we had 9 in a row. I think we played Waterford out in Listowel, and usually we could pull it out of the bag, but we didn't this time. So I think that for me was the one that kind of hurt most. It was like you kind of finished the game and you kind of didn't. It was disbelief that did we actually lose? Yeah. That doesn't usually happen, but it takes a few days for the pill to drop and to kind of realise. So I suppose when we finished in 93, a few of the team then had decided to retire because we'd been on the road a while, and a few new young crew were coming in, and they were all. I think I stayed on for another year or two, but I was based in Dublin as well, so a lot of travelling up and down. But when we finished in 93, that was, to get that win was huge. The number sounded nice too, 10. But I suppose it's time, for it to pass on to move around. No, we were happy, but as I say, when it finished, when we were beaten after the 9 in a row, that was, I suppose, when it really kind of sank in. But we, took 2 years to come back again. And so we proved that we could do it once more. And as I say, then the team started to change. People retired, some stayed on. But the girls now are doing fine. And there's and has always been a good development of the girls. And they've been striving for years. And, they were lucky not to get there a lot of the times. And hopefully now this year is another chance and a huge chance for them to drive on in the final, the 31st, I think, of the month.
When you were watching the Cork team of the 2000s then, were you thinking about your record every year that passed, or were you like, oh no, it's good to have a great team at the top of the table?
I suppose when you're looking from the outside, I suppose you'd like to see it go around and for it to be, shared among people. So when we were playing, I'm sure people were a little bit tired of us, but we weren't tired. When you're playing, you don't mind. But I was keeping an eye on them, all right, to see. And I suppose I didn't want our record to be broken, maybe. Yeah. But I suppose that's a natural feeling. But no, they were a great team. They were a very good team. Managed very well. A lot of those girls as well played the camogie, so that was a huge, just to see the female sport grow and grow and grow each year was huge, and the numbers are still growing, and the support, it's growing and growing, and it's great to see. And I suppose it was nice to know we started it off, from way back, and it's great to see it thrive and blossom, and the players, and it's great support and huge for girls to see people in role models that they can maybe say, I want to be like them one day.
Where do you keep your medals? You've got 10 All Irelands. What do you do with the medals?
Yeah, I don't know. I can find about 5 of them. Yeah, but I'll have to start digging around. A few. I suppose when I was younger, you don't really, you kind of put them somewhere, or I think they were in the house somewhere. But yeah, we'll get to grips with them again. I don't know, but I think the memories is the main thing. Just the memories of playing Crow Park, meeting people through the years. Families were huge as well. My dad was huge, had a huge interest. He was very proud. He to see him in the Hogan stand after, and just the joy. He was a great footballer himself. He played with Austin Stacks hurling, as did my family, my brothers and sisters as well. So it's outside of the sport itself. It brings families, communities, our own club, Austin Stacks. So it's a part of my life, really, I suppose. And I still seem to want to continue. I was at training now last night, and I still am able, thankfully, to put the boots on and run around. Maybe not as fast as I'd like to, but
Where do you play for Stacks at the moment, actually?
I'm playing around maybe corner forward. Yeah.
Where does your daughter play?
She plays out the field, maybe half forward.
You're not fighting for the same jersey anyway?
No.
Incredible stuff there from legendary Marina Barry, winner of 10 All-Ireland medals. You can catch the interview and all of Owen's interviews on our social channels, and she is still playing football. That is just amazing stuff. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. OTB AM is back Monday morning from 7:30 as Jura Nathan react to the All-Ireland football final with live reaction from the winning team's hotel. And right now we're leaving you with Owen's chat alongside Porrick and Martin Lally, the father and son team that run Taffe Bar in Galway. Thanks to the team today, producer Colin Buhig, sorry Colin, one job, Ken Dore and Jojo Cardoso, who are on vision and sound. Enjoy and have a great weekend.
You are very welcome back to Taffe's on Shop Street in Galway City Centre. Delighted to be joined by Martine and Porrick Lally. Just coming in here, the place seems very, very busy. There's a great buzz around the city this week. Next week, though, there could be a potential homecoming for the Galway footballers, and of course Galway Race Week. You could potentially be in for the week of your lives.
Yes, Owen, it's going to be a busy week regardless, but fingers crossed now, all going well. Sunday we'll have Mr. Sam Maguire join us for the week, and I'm sure he'll be paraded around Galway racetrack, I'm sure 1 or 2 days. But yeah, there's great excitement building. There's great colour around the town, around the city, around the county, and everyone's awful excited. Looking forward to it. It'll be a tough game against Kerry, but there's great belief and great hope, and you just never know on the day. We're remaining very hopeful anyway.
How does it compare to your own playing days in terms of the hype?
A bit different when back in the day when we were playing. You were kind of in your own little bubble. You were trying to keep the head down and just get through the training sessions and prepare that way. But kind of when we're out of the bubble now, you can see exactly what's going on. There's huge hype around, huge colour around the county, around the city, and. Yeah, it's different. It's enjoyable. Both sides of it was enjoyable at the time, and this is a very enjoyable too. But yeah, we're really looking forward to it. We're super excited, and yeah.
Brilliant, Martine. How does this compare to some of the great moments for Galway sport in general, the hype you've seen around the city this week?
Well, I've never seen anything like this week, because the last, we say, since the Derry game, it's been such, the couple of weeks was very short, and all of a sudden, all the flags are coming up. Everyone is talking about it. There's not much talk at the moment about the races at all, you know. Like, as a matter of fact, we're hoping we'll have the Sam Maguire, as Pádraig says there, we'll have the Sam Maguire with us during the race week. But there's unreal hype, including the tourists that are here in the city. They're all wondering what's going on, why all this maroon and white everywhere. But this, yeah, they're all up for it, really. It's a great day.
What are you telling the tourists?
We're telling them that you have to support the Galway team. This is the Galway football team. It's the All Ireland. And it's our first time there in the last 21 years since we had it. So it's a big thing for Galway, and you can see it all over the county, all over the streets. The atmosphere is unreal.
For people who aren't too familiar with this part of the country, can you explain to us the connection between this pub and the GAA?
Well, the GAA, our family organised buses as well. We were involved in the bus business, and we run buses to all the games. And for the last, I'd say, 30 years now, we've been going to all the different games. And I think, Pádraig been playing with Galway, a lot of the lads come in here when they're going to college. They started coming in here, and we got to know them, and it's great, and it's kind of a home from home. We get a lot of Mayo people in here too. Unfortunately, they are not as lucky as we are with the winnings, and the banter is unreal. And as you can see on the walls everywhere around the place, it's football.
Absolutely. Damien Comer works in here a bit.
He does own, we've Damien, and we've another panel member, Niall Daly. He's been working with us for the last 6 or 7 years. So there's great connection there with the pub. Over the years, we've had different players working with us. We had Sean O'Gara spent a year with us. He took a year out of teaching around 2000. He spent a good few months working with us. Sean Armstrong spent a good few couple of years working with us. Niall Daly, who's on the panel at the moment, still doing a bit of part-time with us. Damien as well. Damien helped out over the last few years. We had him in St Patrick's Day this year. We had him in for the Rag Week, giving a hand. And in fairness to the lads, we kind of left them alone in the last few months. We didn't really bother them because we knew they were busy training, busy working. And I met Damien the other day for a coffee, and he was saying to me that unfortunately he won't be around for the races. You know, he's going to be busy hanging out with Sam Maguire, please God. But it's great. A lot of people compare Taffe's to a country pub, but it's in the middle of the city, you know. But it's great. We get people from all over the country coming in. There's a famous hole in the ceiling there that was put in there in 1998 by one of our bartenders at the time when Pádraig Joyce scored that famous goal against Kildare in '98. He punched the air, but unfortunately there was a ceiling above him. He put his fist through the ceiling, and we ended up putting a frame around it. So we've people coming from all over taking photos of that particular hole. We've loads of memorabilia, loads of jerseys around. We've Joe Bergen's Irish jersey, we've Finian Hanley's Irish jersey, we've Damien Comer's Connacht final jersey from 2018. We have on the wall here beside us Declan Meehan's 2001 jersey. We've Sean O'Gra's 98 winning jersey over by the fireplace. So the place is covered in history, covered in memorabilia, and please God, we'll be adding to that now next week.
How good is Comer at pulling a pint?
Very good, yeah. A lot better at scoring goals and points, but no, he's not a bad pint puller either now. You know, he's a good man to have on your side. But in fairness to Damien, anytime we rang him or texted him looking for him to come in and give us a hand if we needed a dig out, he was always like that. And that's the type of person he is. He's a good, honest, down-to-earth fella, and we wish them all the success, himself, Niall Daly, and all the team, you know. And we're all looking forward to seeing a big performance out of Damien. And if Niall gets a bit of game time as well, I'm sure he won't let us down.
You echo that sentiment about Damien?
Without a doubt. I'm a big man. I'm pretty heavy, and the two of us inside the counter. It's narrow enough in there. And when I tell you, when you get a push off Damien Comer inside that counter, I wouldn't like to get a push off him on the pitch. He's really strong. He's a strong lad. Good lad. Very nice personality. And no matter who comes in, a lot of people come in and say, "Can I get a picture with you, Damien?" And no problem. He hops down there, you know. So he's a good lad all rounder. Perfect.
Can you give us your version of events with the hole in the ceiling?
Yeah, well, Coley Kane was the guy's name. He was the barman here at the time, and as you can see what's written on it, there's Coley's Hole. And the amount of people, as Pádraig says, coming in, and can we see where's Coley's Hole? But there was an American woman here one day, and there was just a bit of fun. She just came in and she said, "Can I see this famous hole that as they're talking about it?" You see. And she looked it up and she said, "Oh yeah, I see that." She said, "And how come you never broke the glass?" She said, "Because it's just the way she said it." And we said, "Well, to be honest with you, we put the glass up afterwards." And that's the way it was. We put the score up there as well, and the score that was the final score of the day. and it's great. It's like it's a good few years back now, you know.
Yeah. It's a genius move to frame it, because that's just it's so well known. Like I'd known about that, and I hadn't even realised it was this pub before coming here today. Like it's one of the most iconic pieces of, can you call it memorabilia even? But it was a genius move, whoever's idea it was.
The fella that actually, I asked, he's a stonemason, come plasterer. He passed away since he was from Inisheer in the Aran Islands. I said to him, Matt, would you put a bit of plaster on that and cover it up, you see? So I went away anyway, and he never said a word. The next thing he came back with this frame, and I said, what's your idea? He said, do you mind if I frame it instead of covering it up? He said, because you must remember, he said, that was Porrick Joyce's goal, and it was so famous, you know, and it was his idea. Like, we never asked him to do that, you know. And it was a great idea, really.
We had a few, I think it was about 2019, maybe right before COVID. Actually, it was race week enough as well. Strangely enough, we had the Kildare lads in. They must have been on a bit of a reunion or whatever of that generation. Anthony Rainbow, Dermot Early, Glenn Ryan. There was a good few of them come in. They must have been going racing or whatever. They came in earlier that day, and they were all hanging out in this room here, and they saw that hole and they were asking us about it. So the Kildare lads, we explained to them exactly what happened. We gave them the story, and they were taking photos of the hole and everything. So we knocked a bit of banter out of it with the Kildare lads. So yeah, it's great. It's a great topic of conversation. People come in and they see it. Even people from overseas, you know, the tourists and stuff, they're asking about it, and it's great, really. It was a great idea to frame it.
Yeah. When you walk in here, like with the photos up on the wall as well, it instantly reminds you of like Paddy's pub or the Boar's Head in Dublin, where it is kind of like the go-to spot for a lot of people. You've obviously got a few members of enemy territory wandering in here over the last little while. Marty, and your photo beside both Gooch Cooper and Jack O'Connor on that wall alone.
Yeah, Jack and the Gooch was here on a few occasions. Very nice guy, nice to talk to, nice, very genuine people. Again, talking, oh, there's the Gooch, can we get pictures with him? And they all have, you know, no bother. Jack is a cool dude. He comes in, he used to come in before he took over the management again of the Kerry team, and he'd sit in that was his corner over there, and like he came in there with a couple of friends of his, and unknown to anyone, he just sit there, have his few pints, and genuine sound, perfect.
Who's the highest profile person that's ever walked in here?
God, that's a question. I'd never go thinking back. You know, who do you think?
We've had different lads. We've had Paul O'Connell in the rugby circles. We've had obviously loads of GAA lads. You know, the Gooch was here. Robbie Fowler was here, and Joe Brawley was here not that long ago. You know, there's from different sports. You know, we'd be considered obviously a GAA pub. But I suppose people like to come in and just hang out. Like, everyone's welcome. We don't make a fuss about people. They probably enjoy that also. You know, I suppose with regards high profile, the way we see it, anyone that's playing football or hurling for Galway, they're stars in our eyes, and they're always welcome. And it's always great to see them come in. They come in, they have a bit of crack, they enjoy the music, and for the most part they're left alone. You know, and I suppose that's the beauty about it.
What was this place like in 98, 2001 after the finals?
It was unreal, because during 98 the traffic used to go down the street here that time, you know. And I remember on the night we were in Dublin, we came back that night, and right outside the door here there was traffic coming down the street. There was lads jumping up on top of cars. There was, you know, visitors passing with a caravan, I'll never forget it, and the 4 or 5 lads up on top of it. It was just unreal. People went wild, you know. It had been so long since that particular year. And then 2000 and again 2001 we were back up in finals, you know. We were spoiled over them few years, and now it's 21 years ago, so here we go again, you know. Please God.
Do you remember being in here after the 01 final?
I do indeed, yeah. We had the homecoming on the Monday. We stayed in Dublin in the City West on the Sunday night. We had the banquet there, and we brought Sam back down across the Shannon, and we had a reception out in the cathedral there, and we went for a meal in Salt Hill. So afterwards then we were kind of left to do our own thing. So a bunch of players and myself, we all came in, and we had a few drinks here. The band were playing, and it was unbelievable, the atmosphere, the buzz, and it just lifts the whole county. Like, it's phenomenal. You know, we've been through a few tough years now with COVID, and there's nothing but positivity at the moment. It was very negative there for a while with all that was going on around the world, and it boosts the county, it boosts the city, and it's phenomenal. It's like the town is buzzing at the moment. You can see it yourself if you walk up and down the streets. There's flags, there's bunting everywhere, and like, everyone is just talking about it, and it's brilliant. And I suppose, as my dad was saying, like it's been 21 years since Galway footballers players have been in an All-Ireland final. It's crazy to think that it's been that long ago. But at the time, I suppose supporters and players were probably thinking it was going to be a regular occurrence. None of us would have thought it'd be 21 years. But I think they've got a great manager in Pádraig Joyce. They've a great bunch of young lads, great backroom team with Cian O'Neill, John Divley, Mial O'Donnell, all these guys, John Concannon. It's lining up nicely. You know, obviously Kerry is going to be a tough challenge, and we know that. But look at this. There's great belief. Pádraig Joyce played with belief. He played with confidence, and he's definitely instilled that in his team. You know, so like they'll be going up to Dublin on Saturday evening, and they'll be thinking about nothing else but winning that match. And I know Kerry are going to be tough. It's going to be a massive challenge. They've got some huge players up and down the field, and it'll be tough work. But like Pádraig Joyce will have them so well prepared. Cian O'Neill will have them well drilled, and the rest of the backroom team. Funny enough, Pat Comer is involved with the goalkeepers this year. The famous Pat Comer, who made the video a year till Sunday. He was sub-goalkeeper in '98. He's bringing a lot of experience to the table as well. So, look at it's great. It's a huge occasion for the county, and we're all looking forward to it. And please God, Sunday evening we'll be running around town with smiles on our faces.
Yeah, and this time next year we'll have A Year Till Sunday 2 out in the cinemas probably. One last thing, I presume you're running a bus tour, or you're running a Galway supporters bus up to Dublin again this weekend, are you?
We are indeed, yeah. We're running a couple of buses. If you could get 5 or 6 buses more, you'd fill them. You know, there's a big demand, and unfortunately with the All Ireland final being on in July, we're busy with tourism anyway. All the buses are busy, so it's hard to get buses, and the trains, I believe, are full. But people will make their way, walking, running, or getting lifts. There'll be people up there, and there should be great Galway support up on Sunday, because everyone I was talking to have got tickets, or getting tickets, or promised tickets, and they're all heading up direction.
Lads, who's going to win? Start with yourself first.
Yeah, without a doubt, I hope and I believe that Galway are good enough to win. I'd say give Galway by 2 points.
I'll agree with my dad there now. As I said earlier, it's going to be a huge challenge. Like Kerry, they've got quality all over the field from number 1 up to number 15. If they can minimise the supply into David Clifford, they've a great chance. I feel if they're still in the game with 5 or 10 minutes to go, I think Galway will shade it. They seem to be a better team in the second half of late. The last 2 games they've had very strong second half. So I believe if they can get plenty of supply into Damien Comer and Shane Walsh, and keep Clifford relatively quiet, we've a great chance. And I'd say Galway by a point.
Very good. Plenty of optimism around town today, and why not? Folks, a pleasure chatting to you. Thanks a million for welcoming into the pub, and enjoy Sunday as much as you can.
Thanks a million, Eoin. Cheers.
And I'm delighted that for the first time in a while, John is with us in studio. Hey, keeping, you're looking well.
Yeah. It's all the virus thing. We're hopefully getting past it, and
hopefully
get on the screen a little bit.
Exactly. We'll get you back a bit more.
We'll try.
As I said, we had a brilliant response to your reflections on Don Revie, and I think it's important to do these because, like, for Matt Busby, for even people of my age at this time, we hear the stories, but often they take on a life of their own. So it's great to hear from somebody who was there and has a lot of personal reflections of them as well. You said last week, when you spoke about Don Revie, about his importance to you and your life. Just how important he was. Matt Busby, what are your first things that come to mind when you're asked about Matt Busby?
Mostly good memories, Nathan, because when I was a kid, mainly because of the great Jackie Carey, Johnny Carey was called at Manchester United, captain Manchester United, when they won the cup in 1948 with the first great Manchester United team. So myself and my pals were mostly, from a distance, Manchester United supporters, and we didn't see much of them. I remember watching them in an exhibition match in Dalymount, but there was no television then. Obviously no television. You couldn't see them, but because of the great Jackie Carey, most of us started to follow Man U from a distance.
So he left an incredible record at Manchester United. He took over 1st of October 1945. Yeah. So just after the war, didn't leave initially till the 4th of June 1969. Within that time, won 5 league titles, the European Cup most famously in 1968, but also brought the club back from the brink after the Munich disaster as well. When you think what he had to go through, firstly taking over at United, straight after the war when football was just finding itself again and having to build the club up.
Yeah.
Like, he did that twice.
Well, probably did it 3 times in the long run, Nathan. But when he took over Manchester United, when we spoke last week about managers, how you judge them, I said, what did they take over and what did they leave? Right. Now, there's no doubt that Manchester, I think Matt Busby, history of Matt Busby, left more than any of the other managers, to be honest. Because when he took over, immediately after the war, which was 45-46, Manchester United weren't the team in Manchester. Manchester City were the team in them. And there was one of the stands was bombed down because of the war. So he was taking over the club that hadn't been really up there with the best.
And the irony is that when we think of Manchester United now, like, the two names that are synonymous are Alex Ferguson and Matt Busby. Matt Busby, his playing career was spent at Manchester City and Liverpool, their two greatest rivals.
Yeah. And obviously went through the war, and Manchester United was his first job, so they were taking a chance on it. But Man City were the team prior to that. You know, Manchester United were only came on because of Matt Busby, really, and he had a big job to do, and he did an unbelievable job, Nathan. You know, from the cup with the great Jackie Carey again, captain, won the cup in 1948. They won the league in 1952, right? And then he started the Busby Babes from that. And like, Matt Busby did something at a time when nobody else did it, which was to get young players into the club and put them in the team when they were very, very young. And one of the things he did, and this is what I believe happened, that in those days, any club could only sign 2 players on terms for the club, right? You're only allowed 2. But what Matt Busby did, and I believe this to be correct, that he got lots of young players on the ground staff.
So he was able to pay them, but not as players?
Yes, so he's only allowed 2.
Okay.
So he might have had with the young players that he got around that time when he started the Busby Babes. For example, he got the great Duncan Edwards, right? Well, Duncan Edwards was a Wolverhampton lad and a Wolverhampton supporter. Bobby Charlton, one of the greatest ever, was a Newcastle guy. So he would obviously be paying him a few quid, but he would have had 6 or 7
right
of the young players on the ground staff. So he got ahead of everybody else. It took the other team, I think Wolves were the next to try and do that, but he got a head start with the Busby Babes at that particular time. But not only did he just do that and was ahead of everybody else, and the great thing about Matt was one of the great things about Matt, he put them in the team. A lot of youngsters. I mean, in those days, I think you put one youngster in at a time.
Right, so it was unusual. It wasn't the case, actually, that he had no choice but to pick young players. He was able to spot that this was an exceptional crop that deserved to be in there.
And put them in, had the nerve to do it. I mean, he had a great team in from 48 or 46, 47 up to... And that team had to be changed. And they were a great team before that. I mean, some people would remember the names, but they were world-class players. I mean, I have them down here. Anyway, I won't read them out. But they were. For example, this is in 48. Jimmy Delaney, Johnny Morris, Jack Rowley, Stan Pearson, and Charlie Midden. That was the forward line. They were famous. They were brilliant. They won the cup. So when they came near the end, right, now he had the young players to put in, but he put a lot of them in. Nobody was doing that at that particular time. It took a lot of courage, and that's what he did. And they became the Busby Babes, and they went on to win things almost immediately. So he was the first to do that, and it's difficult when you're the first to do anything. I did it. He set the trend, and it took the other clubs. Wolverhampton were the next one to do it, to catch up with Matt Busby at that particular time.
It's at that time, 56, 57, when they're winning league titles with the Busby Babes, that you're thinking about moving to England and thinking about signing for Manchester United. How much did you know about Busby, and what interactions did you have with him before you went to the club?
I didn't have any interaction with him. We had Billy Bean was a scout in Ireland, and he sent me over because I was obviously playing schoolboy football, and he was a friend of my father, so he knew me well. So he sent me over when I was 14. You couldn't go permanently until you were 15, so I was there for 4 weeks because they wanted to keep me ahead of any other club. So. And it was great, Nathan. I went there the pre-season and I could watch them. I was playing a bit myself with the other lads. I was only 14. But I could watch the practice matches and the amount of talent. I knew about the Busby Bay, but I didn't know the exact amount of talent that was there. So I was able to watch the first team versus the second team. They had 2 full teams. Bobby Charlton, I think, was 17 at that time. He was absolutely brilliant, even at that particular stage. Could only get on at half time. Do you know what I mean? Duncan Edwards, I think Duncan was in the army. The amount of talent they had at that club was incredible. So I was there for the summer.
And were you in any way overawed?
No, because I was playing with the youngsters. Do you know what I mean?
So you trusted that you'd be able to get towards that level over a couple of years.
They were with the older lads. But it was the amount of talent that was there. And what was great about Busby, he put those lads in at a very, very young age, which was very, very courageous at any time, but particularly at that time. Nobody else was doing. Well, they didn't have the talent because he was ahead of them because he put them on the ground staff and that. So Duncan Edwards and Dennis Voyle, Jack Taylor, all these great players before the Munich Air disaster. I was there in 1955. I didn't go permanently until 1956.
And when you think back to watching Duncan Edwards and Bobby Charlton at an incredibly young age, and the conversations you've had since about Bobby Charlton has been by far and away the best player you ever played with or played against.
Yeah.
Would Duncan Edwards have been that player if it wasn't for Munich?
It could have been. Now I'm seeing him through young eyes at that time, and I thought he was outstanding. But when the competitive matches were on, when I went the next year, I hardly saw the matches because I was playing in the junior team myself.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.